I'm actually kind of worried for my enemies. I'm worried for them because it's been a year and they're still coping about my existence. They're still like haven't gotten over it. Like, can my enemies just be like, yeah, there's that Haas guy, whatever, I'm gonna move on with my day? No, they just like it's blowing their minds and they can't fucking get over it. Holy shit. They're losing their fucking minds. Jesus Christ. 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 By the way, according to the internet, coping means you're telling the truth when a bigger streamer, in terms of their follower count, they've got over 10 years, is lying. So when a bigger streamer's full of shit and I make them look like a bitch and I'm still going against them, that means I'm coping. Because it couldn't possibly be that despite having more viewers, they are a bitch and they're in the wrong. And they're in the wrong. And they're worse than me in every fucking conceivable way. Like, for example, and this is literally not even a joke, they are a cuck and I'm not. Go ahead. Explain how it gets any more complicated
Hello,
than that.
Descartes' disaster. Incredible. Hello. Are you being tortured
And
by
if being a
a
cuck
demon
isn't embarrassing,
by any chance at the moment? Oh yeah, that's true. Fuck. I guess it's gonna be a YouTube panel. I should instead link my YouTube stream. So I'll have to end my Twitch stream. That's tragic. Okay. Tortured by a demon? Yeah. Descartes' demon just using his brain. Okay. Okay, there we go. Look at this guy. He's he's pointing at the camera. Okay. Order. Send this to the bottom. Okay. He's like, I want to call it. Pause, let me call it.
who's the bitch then? You still can't fucking get over it. You little bitch.
I want to talk about China with him. That's what I want. That's all I want. That's all I want in life.
Fucking butthurt bitch. Fucking butthurt, seething little bitch. fucking seething, literally seething,
Oh,
seething.
he's
After
so
a
angry.
fucking year. Seething.
Seething, guys. Crazy. Hold up. Whoa, my
Linux,
day.
you specifically are a pussy. You think that's a
I've done very
man?
little
You
today.
think you can be a man if you're a cuck? And I have to tell you, I'm not
Bro,
just
he's
calling
going
a
off.
name. It's not just the name cuck. It means you
He's
let
going
your girl
sicko
get
mode.
fucked by other men. That's what it means. That's what a cuck means. Naming
Saying
bitches.
seething.
You try to insult me, but according to you, it's okay to be a cuck.
Bro, why is Huz like this?
What have I ever done that could be an insult if it's okay to be a cuck? I've never seen anyone fucking respond to this. I've never seen anyone respond to this.
Oh, 2 minutes, 28
I've
seconds.
never seen anyone respond to that. Ever.
Before I can message in his chat.
So let me show you another video of cuckoldry on display that's going to explain this, right? Look at this. So this guy, he's got the mentality
Oh my god.
of a cuckold psychopath.
I
Ready?
need to move my chat. A cuckold psychopath, he says.
Come on.
Ooh, you know what I need? I need like a good picture to be my background for the stream and stuff.
Holy shit.
Like, what if I added image slideshow? No, just image. Background.
Holy
Okay.
fuck.
Wait. It is on the dead. Wait, what? What's the
Great
fucking
news.
file? Oh, it's a GIF file.
Yo, I gotta make a phone call.
Aesthetic wallpapers. Okay, hold up. This is what we're doing, guys. Okay, we're choosing an aesthetic wallpaper. Like this. This is cute. I was thinking something like this, maybe. But it needs to be big. And I want that to be like behind like my Chrome and stuff. It's too small though. See, why is this like 8? Okay. Look for wallpapers on DeviantArt. Okay, hold up. But someone else said tools, size, large. This is a large enough size. Mm. I want it to be like pastels with like hearts and clouds. This is good enough. Okay. We're gonna make this the background. Mm-mm-mm. Okay, move this to the bottom. Order, bottom. Okay, perfect. And now, it's no longer black at the bottom. Okay, it's good. Okay, how semicolon. If we here, call me kitten. We should really talk sometime, like on stream. I think that would be good. Uh, mm. Hmm. 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 Xi Jinping. It is a fanatic panel. Did I? Why is Haas just like silent sometimes? Making a Twitter with only politics? No. Because I want my politics to like fuel people to my OnlyFans.
Holy fuck.
Oh, he's back.
Just got some crazy fucking news that might change today's stream. Damn. What the fuck is going on? It's pretty crazy. Pretty fucking crazy.
Right, we are going to try to get in. 1 second. Here's what I think. Oz should let me talk to him. That's what I think. Bro, Mm, mm. I was like sitting earlier. I was like this. I was like, hmm. Yeah, ask me political questions in chat.
I don't give a fuck about users in show Q after what just fucking happened. So we're gonna clearly have to get things under control.
What the
Who the
fuck
fuck
is
is this?
going
This is a
on?
streamer. Who's this?
Will he let me in? My dream.
Hold on, let me be safe and like get rid of uh this fucking Discord shit that shows the profile picture. Sec. Hello. Hello.
Mm,
Yeah.
hi, Haz. Okay, you're talking about Shanghai.
Yeah.
Okay, have you been following like what's going on with the COVID situation in China?
No, not really.
Oh, really? Okay, wait. Well, their cases are exploding right now. I don't know if that's what you were intending to cover, but I think it's an
No, I was just
interesting.
gonna cover a lot of misinformation
There's a
about the
ton of
Shanghai lockdowns.
misinformation. Yeah. I, like, have you seen the videos where there's like a parade of healthcare workers and like their white outfits, and people are like, oh my God, they're stormtroopers, like the evil Chinese. And it's just like a parade.
Yeah, and I've seen stuff that was from Taiwan that they said was in Shanghai.
It's pretty absurd. There's a lot of misinformation, and a lot of just like general xenophobia about China. But I think it's a good example of how there's like this sort of prisoner's dilemma with COVID, where China was extremely effective at locking down. And in general, China is like very good at being orderly. And like that's really important for me in my politics is this axis of like how you can create order in a society. But the problem with like very orderly societies is that sometimes making, striving towards that virtue and that order can be undercut by other cultures. And when you have other countries that just allow COVID to run rampant, really what happens is that like you just get fucked for actually doing the right thing and like locking down and like trying to actually prevent the virus from spreading through your population, as China has been like extremely effective at doing. So I think it's like an unfortunate but like very telling situation, where cultures that like are very good at something can sometimes be extremely punished for that.
Well, honestly, if this was South Korea or Taiwan, I don't think they would be penalized as much. I think the America and the West tends to go hard on China because the
Hmm.
Chinese have sovereignty, you know?
Hmm. Yeah, and I think like I read this book a while back. I forget who it was. It was by a Chinese general, but like he talks a lot about Chinese foreign policy and how like it's really centered around this idea of like Zhongguo and like the Middle Kingdom. How China doesn't want to like influence other countries necessarily, but they want to retake their place on the world stage as the Middle Kingdom, for which other countries go to for guidance. But yeah, I think that China is extremely interesting. I think that like you should really look to China as like the preeminent opposition to like modernity and specifically like the liberal democratic order.
Yeah, I mean, China used to be the center of the world for most of history,
Yeah.
so the last, I don't know, 300 years maybe, or 200, depending on how you look at it, is really the exception to the norm.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, the century of sort of humiliation that China's gone through. And so there's like a deep wound in the national pride for, I think, a lot of Chinese people. But And also there's this identity crisis in China, I think, between these very conservative sort of Confucian values, and these more modern communist values. And we've seen like a marriage of this with like socialism or communism with Chinese characteristics. But I don't know, what's your take on that? The Chinese future and this identity crisis between competing value systems.
What we're seeing with Russia is a manifestation of the way China's been changing the world under the radar in a kind of like material, not so much political or ideological way. And I really think the source of what we call multipolarity, where different regions are just going to have to coexist and accept the fact that there is no universal world police that can impose its specific values. I think it's a new era of international relations and also world systems, right? Because China's foreign policy is very clearly not based in interfering with the political affairs of other countries. So, as far as competing value systems are concerned, I think it's not just China, it's only two competing value systems, right? It's the Western so called value system, and then it's the rest of the world, right? Which obviously has differing systems, right? Or value systems, but there is a more ancient way in which people have come like to respect their differences, right? The Silk Road, right, where China was trading with Persia and Turkey. I mean, India, all these people had different, value systems, or Russia at the time, but they found a way to kind of learn from each other and cooperate, and also fuse in a way without annihilating one or the other.
I think that's true. I also think that like you have to bear in mind how modern and sort of new these like liberal values really are. If you look at most of human history, the idea that we have this like very, ideologically liberal, ideologically egalitarian system for government is extremely unusual. And so most, ancient nations and states, were much more, I guess, like reactionary, and we're similar in that way. So I think that like when you look at the modern sort of foreign policy struggles, and especially now, I think it's a struggle between these ancient modes of relating to each other and to state power, and they're fighting against this liberal order that is very new and very, in my opinion, it's on shaky ground, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, as far as that liberalism is concerned, you're also dealing with not just liberalism, which is kind of ambiguous, right? It's kind of like a lax policy, but also this kind of thing from the British Empire, which was this imposition of a global, truly global empire where the sun never sets, supposedly, right?
Hmm.
And it's just this kind of inability to be reconciled with the fact not only that there are other value systems, but that every value system is ultimately going to be based in like some material ground that it itself cannot condition, right? And what I mean by that is that with the British Empire comes this idea that you can have a value system that is unconditional. It's not based in civilization and this kind of unwritten agreement between the state and civil society where they come to an understanding that the state can't fully ground its own premises and it has to respect that it arises out of these concrete social bonds that kind of arise organically, right? So I think what's meant by liberalism should also, because the reason I say that is because I think liberalism can very easily, at its foundation, turn into its apparent opposite. It shouldn't be taken at
Mm-hmm.
its face value of, you know, the freedom and equality and all this kind of stuff. Because we can see with fascism, it very much takes its departure, right? Or at least in the German kind, right? Takes its departure from the same kind of British Empire liberal metaphysics while discarding those. And then today, right? You know, liberal democracies are increasingly negligent of, the basic liberties of what is considered part of the liberal tradition, freedom of speech and all that kind of stuff. So that also it also be kept in mind that by liberalism, it's not just a set of values; it's a very unique way of um, establishing a global system of control.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's right to an extent. I think you have to contrast like the British way of operating on the global stage with the American. And if you look at Britain's, empire and how it spanned the globe, it engaged in a kind of old world colonialism, which was like incredibly brutal on one hand, and on the other hand, like incredibly effective at spreading its values. But I think this is not necessarily the case with like American foreign policy. And you look at how America has operated in the Middle East, like Afghanistan, and it's just been like a complete disaster. America has not been able to create these liberal democracies that it's wanted to. So I don't know. I think there's like a departure here in how it operates, and like also a sort of fundamental inability to understand the nature of force on the global scale, and also really just like how to relate to people who aren't living like already in liberal societies. Because like winning hearts and minds is something that works as domestic policy, but doesn't work when you go to Afghanistan.
Yeah, the way I see it is that o- other people, there was a certain point where liberalism, okay, we're entering an illiberal world, and because of the failure of capitalist modernity to like spread to these, you know, pre-modern societies, and otherwise in the form of colonialism, right? So, and then it's paradoxical because if you're colonial, if you're a colonial subject, you can't also be a free, sovereign, liberal society, right?
Mm-mm. Yeah, no.
So, but today, I think there's a new kind of special type of colonialism, if you want to call it that, which is brought about by the American internet, right?
Mm.
And a lot of people underestimate this, but not having not only platform sovereignty, but just internet in terms of your internet infrastructure, that level of sovereignty. Because as they say today, this is what the Pentagon says: the information war is the most important battle space in the 21st century. And there is this new kind of way of sidelining the need to like establish all of these NGOs of civil society, all this bullshit, just by having a country be a part of the American internet, right? In a way, it makes them in their consciousness, right, ideologically subservient. So I think that's the last breath liberalism has, is through the American internet.
Yeah, I think that's right in a lot of ways. And I think that like the progressive left has really, it's done a very good job, operating on this sort of like information battleground and entering into universities and institutions that propagate knowledge. And in the modern, age, a lot of that's like Twitter and these social media platforms that really control how people are speaking to each other, control the discourse, and so on. And so I think that this like progressive faction has really got a stranglehold on that like way of talking to people, and by extension like the way of thinking. And so it makes sense that like if you were to export that out elsewhere, what you'd really be doing is like exporting this progressive way of relating to things and politics.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point. But yeah, on that note, I gotta go though. I got a
Okay,
lot of stuff to cover. But yeah,
goodbye,
thanks.
Cos.
Bye.
I want to talk to Haas more. I feel like we disagree on a lot, but we can't really get into it quickly. Hmm. Interesting stuff. Man, I swear to God, every time. Oh, wait. Okay. Every time that I open my like camera and I'm like, all right, I'm gonna stream, I'm like, wow, this is looking really good. My camera setup's like great right now. And then I fucking open Discord and it's all fucked. I don't know what's going on. Um, hmm. Okay, what's Dylan Burns doing? Oh, 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 what?
But the crowd is in complete control when they're clapping. They're saying,
Whoa,
"We
he's
agree
reading
with what you're
Vulture.
saying, proceed." But when they're laughing,
So
Okay.
I don't know.
Do two instances of OBS and only use one as the virtual cam. I don't know what you mean, a Akana boy. I just mean that, like, I don't know. It's something about like the lighting or something.
So yeah.
Stop. Okay, hold on. Dogs. I should set up a more proper debate with Haas. Because I disagree quite a lot with his like communism stuff. I think we're both anti-progressive, but yeah, I'm a commie. So true. But I'm a far left communist insurgent. Hmm. Okay, the ooh, cool. I think the rape culture discourse panel. We're gonna start that in like an hour. And I think that'll be fun. You know what I should do? I should allow people in my Discord. Wait, okay. But I want people to be able to see this channel, but not connect. Can people do that? I want people to see that I'm in the exclusive. Wait, hold on. I'm a commie, actually. No, take that back right now. Not a commie. You're a monster. Okay, server settings. Members. No, I want to see roles. Default permissions. Okay, good. A communist agent. Here's what I am. A cool dude. That's what my politics are. I'm of the cool dude political philosophy. I haven't seen his translo. You know what we should watch? The translo culture video. Mr. Girl, translo culture. Oh, it's only 8 minutes. Oh God. Okay. It's muted.
Vert, some of it's subtle. Some of it is so subtle, we call it dog whistling. Because as a Jew, I face a lot of bigotry online.
Whoa.
Some of it's very overt,
Same.
some of it's subtle. Some of it is so subtle, we call it dog whistling. Because unless you're a dog or a Jew, you can't even hear it. When these creators make these anti-Semitic remarks about me, do I report them? Do I form a Twitter mob and demand they be silenced? No. I just say, oi! And I can't even control being a Jew. Trust me. It is truly an immutable characteristic. I just wish I were normal. Now, am I implying that being trans is voluntary? Well, for some people, yeah, it has to be. I mean, anyone can say they're trans, and then they are. Then they're part of the trans community, right? So are you telling me that you think that 100% of trans-identifying people feel the same genuine conviction that they're really the opposite sex? Are we assuming that there's no piggybacking perverts or opportunists or teenagers experimenting or clout seekers or just confused people or shit, people who just think it would be fun to transition? There's no way to know who's really
Okay, so here's the thing. Being trans is something you can opt into, right? Because being trans is just the identity part. It's just saying, I identify as this. Dysphoria or gender identity disorder is not something you could opt into or out of. So here's the thing, like the progressive faction has basically redefined trans to be like very specifically about the identity portion. And I don't think that's a good redefining of the word, but like just rolling with it, I think we should make that distinction that like the identity, yeah, that's something that you can identify into or out of, but like the internal biological mechanism that is dysphoria, that's not something that seems like you can opt into or out of.
trans. But do we need to know who's really trans? No, but trans people have established themselves as a class of people who require extreme sensitivity and accommodation, and anyone can opt in. I could say that I'm a trans lesbian right now, in the middle of this video, and not change anything about myself, and you would just have to accept it.
So I think the other problem is that like that's not true, and it's because being trans is really like a very political thing, and so by like the logic of trans rights activism, yes, you could do that, but like the reality is that you can't do that unless you're a progressive and down with like everything that trans people say, basically. So yes and no, like in theory, yes, but like these theories are never consistent.
Trans activism is very attractive to people who want to play the role of outraged victim.
That's true.
And this dynamic hurts well-intentioned trans people, the good ones, if you will, kind of the way that terrorism hurts Islam, or the way that my behavior hurts the Jewish people. In both my gender and Black Lives Matter narrative videos, I talked about how conservatives are kind of cruel with the way they set boundaries, and how progressives don't like to set boundaries at all. Well, I've come to set some cruelty-free boundaries. Trans activism is overshadowed, but also propelled by the ever-present threat of suicide. This has to stop. It makes people who care about the well-being of trans people, such as myself, afraid to say what we're thinking, unless we're billionaires. It makes it so that the only people really willing to give any kind of pushback do so in the form of sociopathic mockery, because all that's left are the people who don't care. Suicide threats, vague or specific, should not be used to silence people. We should be careful when we're talking about suicidality among trans people, or gender dysphoria among suicidal people. It should be recognized as a serious problem requiring serious attention, yes. But we've all been in enough abusive relationships to know that nothing good is going to come from, if Mr. Girl doesn't get banned, trans kids will die. It's coercive, and preys on liberal guilt. A similar problem is dubious claims about high murder rates. I have not seen and cannot find statistics to support the narrative that trans people should live in fear of being murdered by Nazis. Similarly, I take issue with straw man arguments such as trans people exist, trans people have a right to exist, you're trying to erase us, and so forth. When you receive pushback about your ideas or your proposals or demands, you are not facing total annihilation. You're just getting criticized. And while it is definitely easy and certainly tempting to guilt-trip liberals into feeling like they're committing genocide by criticizing minorities, I don't think you should do so. Guilt and fear are the fuel of transal culture. But how does it work? It's kind of charming when your grandparents are racist at the dinner table. They're a product of their time. We all understand that. It's cute in a way. Not so with trans ideology. New theories about gender and accompanying demands are popping up every week, and if they sound good, we just run with it. With transal culture, you don't cross the line. The line crosses you. It's a cult. Anybody who resists or even asks questions is a bigot who needs to be silenced. Trans ideology doesn't want to spread through enlightenment. It spreads through fear, ostracization, destruction. The trans cult does not pull on your heartstrings. It goes after your bank account. As liberal, modern people, Americans are very resistant to any sort of ideology or cult that spreads through overt force. But the trans ideology does spread through force. It should be a movement of love, and it could be. But right now it's a movement of community surveillance and terror. Ironically, the trans cult uses the tools of fascism to define anyone who resists as a fascist. If you don't join the trans cult, you're actually part of an anti-trans cult that's trying to kill all the trans people, like a fundamentalist religion. It's not sufficient to say, okay, you believe your thing and I'll believe my thing. There can only be one thing. Trans ideology seeks to eradicate and replace your innermost private thoughts about gender. Now, criticizing trans activism is not the same as criticizing trans ideology, but let's face it, a coercive echo chamber is not the ideal gender theory think tank. So here are some official Mr. Girl stances, which have all been labeled as transphobic to varying degrees. Not telling your sex partner your genitals is rape. I've seen some people make the argument that, like, well, if I'm a trans woman, then I'm a woman, so why should I have to say anything? We've all agreed that trans women are women. Your logic is sound, but the answer is that when people say trans women are women, they are lying to you. They are doing this to be nice. You'll find that when push comes to shove, like on a swim team, or in a locker room, or in the bedroom, people are more honest. In the same vein, trans women should not compete in women's sports. I've seen the counter-argument, well, who cares about sports? People who play and watch sports. Just admit you're too much of a pussy to address the issue. J.K. Rowling is not transphobic. She can be smug, she can be annoying or passive-aggressive. Mostly she just disagrees with you, and she's really rich, so the bank account trick doesn't work on her. And lastly, the don't say gay bill is fine. It's clearly more of a don't say trans bill, but the part that people take issue with says, classroom instruction on sexual orientation and gender identity may not occur in kindergarten through grade 3. So why is this in the bill? Well, it's because conservatives don't trust you not to brainwash their daughters into thinking that they're boys if they play with trucks. Is this a reasonable fear? Yes, absolutely. Would you trust conservatives not to brainwash your kids into being Christians if they could at school? No. So, liberals, I think it's time to stop scratching your head and pretending not to understand that there's a huge schism around the topic of gender in this country. And from a conservative's perspective,
I mean, I think it's like worse than what he's saying in a way, because I think that like the question of whether or not trans women are women is really something that's like should be a philosophical debate and should be open to debate. And I think the answer is either unclear or, if anything, leans slightly towards one way. It's like trans women are not really the same as cis women. And so, you know, the fact that like you can't really have that discussion on Twitch is really bad. And the fact that you can't really have that in general, that discussion, without being seen as like, you know, horrible, bigoted, or whatever. I think that that's not good. Um, and I think that like a lot of these questions about, you know, trans identity or where trans people fit into the culture, it's all like downstream from the question of whether or not trans women are women or trans men men. But you can't have that discussion on Twitch or elsewhere. And I think that's really it's dangerous because like before there's this sort of like appearance on these tech platforms of like neutrality, of allowing people like free speech. But like the fundamental questions are not really allowed. They're not really allowed to have those conversations. And so the game is really it's sort of rigged from the start.
You want to convince little boys to take hormones and cut their dicks off. And given that that is their perspective, I think asking you to wait until the kids are 9 to start this tug of war is actually pretty reasonable. And I don't think the bill is homophobic either. Say I have an 8-year-old kid, and the kid says to their teacher, hey, I think I might be gay. The teacher says, oh, well, talk to your parents about that, or we can talk about it next year. That's fine. The real reason liberals hate this bill is it suggests that trans ideology may not be the settled, accepted, ultimate scientific truth, but just another religion. Which it is. In closing,
Yeah, I mean,
I just want to say, I don't blame trans people for this. We're all complicit. We're all enabling it. So wherever you stand, I want us to be empathetic, even when we're angry.
he is banned. Whoa, what the fuck? I talked to him and that he immediately got banned. Oh no. No, don't say that. Don't say I cursed him. Yeah, the Taft has touch of death. Hmm. Yeah, I love Jeff Bezos. I would go to war for Mr. Bezos himself. I actually asked Mr. Girl if he wanted to debate, and he said that I would agree with him on too much. And so he was like, no, you just like agree with me and it'd be too nice. Whoa, multitasking Taft Hash and Vosh? Crazy. Insane. Maybe Twitch instituted a height requirement. Yeah, that's why Steven got banned as well. Any recent hot takes? I don't know if I have any recent hot takes. I think he streamed with Fuentes on Cozy. If I wasn't afraid of giving Fuentes my IP address, I would stream on Cozy. I think you'd be, how sick would this be? Get like the green screen and just do like the Fuentes background and like dress in a suit with like the mug and everything. And just like not like address it, just like act like it's a normal show. Yeah, there's a dress code for women on Cozy, but he wouldn't consider me a woman. So am I allowed to just dress normally? Yeah, loopholes. It's like how right wing, far right wing people consider me a man. And so it's okay if I date lesbians because that's just a heterosexual relationship. So it's like if I'm dating a woman, that's actually based and trad pilled and good in the eyes of God. So it's like, actually, when it comes to relationships, I'm like very not degenerate. I'm like monogamous, heterosexual relationship, gonna procreate. So it's great. What's the ideal procreation situation? Just me and my girlfriend. That's the ideal situation. And just like we're on the beach in southern France in like a nice as fuck Airbnb. That's the ideal procreation situation. In Nice, over the Azure coast. Yeah, if one just doesn't want to like date or talk to women, because they're all degenerate whores. Oh, I had a talk the other night. It was off stream. Brittany from Politically Provoked just like pulled me into a discussion with like a bunch of people. And she was like, well, she was like, I need you to like talk about trans stuff. And I did. And I was talking with this guy, and he sounded so much like Fuentes. It was insane. I was like listening to him talk, and I was like, it sounds like I'm listening to Nick Fuentes. It was bizarre. And then I've like heard a few other Groypers talk like in different situations, and they always sound like they're doing an impression of Nick. It's like surreal. And it's so funny because like I feel like if I were to talk to a Groyper, like in real life, they would I would just know, like from the way that they talk, that they listen to Fuentes. Like if I met a guy in like a subway and he was like talking to me and he was like, I can't do it. I'm not good at like impressions, but he was like doing the Fuentes stuff. It would just be, it'd be so obvious. Because I've listened to over 10,000 hours of Fuentes. That's how I know how Nick talks. No, he's just like, I don't know. I listened to like some Fuentes and he has a very distinct way of speaking. I think if you watch him in like any debate or watch just like clips of him, he's like, it's a little bit like politician-y. He like talks with his hands and he like emphasizes certain words. He uses like the same few phrases over and over. And I think it's interesting because like I think sometimes I speak a little bit like Destiny or Mr. Stephen Bennell because I've watched like quite a lot of Stephen's content. And I used to talk like CPG Grey. I always get his name mixed up. Because I watched or I listened to like so much Hello Internet. Whoa, Scardor, the greatest streamer on earth. Oh my god. Unbelievable. The god himself, Scardor. I need to see if I'm following Scardor. Thank you. I will have an amazing stream. Okay, I am. Anna's very obsessed with Destiny. Yeah. Yeah, we'll see how the panel goes. It's gonna be interesting. Someone said like Scandor, and I was like, oh shit, did I say the name wrong? Does he pronounce it like Scandor? No, you're trolling me. I'm being trolled. I don't know what's up with Anna. I try not to get into the drama, but Oz got banned. Right after I talked to him. Fuentes sounds very sweet. I don't know. What do you mean sweet? Mm. What, an interview with Joe? Oh my god. Don't say it. Oh, like stretching my foot. Yeah, Joe. Got him. Destroyed. Holy shit. Ooh. Okay. Oh, I was supposed to join the StreamYard. He has an innocent voice. I don't know. I don't know if I describe his voice as innocent. If anything, he sounds like somewhat mature. I mean, just sounds like a man. I don't listen to Nick Fuentes and think like, oh, this like young boy who's like so innocent. Wait, who got banned for what? Misinfo. Oh, really? And to think Hassan is not banned over Ukraine misinfo. Crazy. Yeah, he's on this like Joker arc. It's very strange. Because I think Batman is in many ways like a sort of reactionary superhero. Like he's all sort of about like order and justice and enforcing that like specifically through violence. Like there's a lot of criticism of Batman as being like, you know, he's not using his billions for good. He's using them to like just like exact punishment on the villains of the universe. So I think it's weird if you're like a right wing person and you really identify with the Joker. I mean, I understand that. No, I don't think dating is that hard for trans people, honestly. I have a very easy time dating though. I was thinking I think it'd be cool to do like a video or maybe like a panel on dating and like dating advice because I feel like there a lot of people really struggle with dating, and I feel like a big part of that is that we've sort of let go of these like cultural rituals for dating. You know, if you go back in time, all of your ancestors lived in cultures where there were rituals for courtship and for talking to women. And those rituals and ways of courtship have been eroded. You know, and it can be things as simple as like the idea that the man like pays for the bill after dinner. You know, that's a small thing, but that doesn't exist anymore. And so I think a lot of men are left in this scenario where they don't know how to operate in the modern world. And a lot of like the modern messaging around dating is like really not good for young men. I think we'll get into that a little bit in this panel actually, but you know, the idea that like you shouldn't pay the bill, just since we're on this example, is really quite bad advice. You know, if you're a young man, uh, that's something you should do to indicate like to women that, you know, you're willing to take care of them. Things like giving her your coat or opening the door for her. These are things that have been like, you know, taught to young men as like not important. And the feminist woman, you know, the modern feminist woman doesn't care about these things. But I think women really do care about all of these little things. And so the fact that we've lost like these standards is really why a lot of people struggle. And I think one of the reasons why I've been so successful in just like getting into like a good relationship is that I'm really willing to like take on that role of like a provider, and to engage in some of these like older courtship rituals. And you know, when I'm like taking my girlfriend on a date, I really try to look at it like I'm trying to be the gentleman of like, you know, the 20th century. I'm trying to like embody this ideal. And that's what the leftists want to destroy. They want to destroy these ideals of gender. They want to abolish these categories. And, you know, in abolishing them, you thrust people into this world of contradiction and bad advice and failure. And, you know, what you have in that world is just like the pursuit of hedonistic pleasure. And, you know, we're going to talk about rape culture. I think a big part of that is just like there's a casual sex culture and there's a lack of meaning. And when you lack meaning and when you pursue casual sex, the end result is a lot of bad sex, a lot of non consensual sex. So yeah, I think we'll get into that. You thought I dated guys. I'm dating a woman right now. I've dated guys in the past. I quite like fiction. I was recently talking about The Three Body Problem by Liu Qiqian. Um, that's a fantastic science fiction series that I definitely recommend. My wife and I fall into traditional roles and we fit perfectly. It's pretty badass. I feel bad for folks that aren't able to find that harmony. Yeah, and so like some people, I think the problem too is that like traditional roles require a lot of responsibility. It's hard to be a provider if you're a man. That's not easy. And the easy thing to do is to just like engage in this sort of like egalitarian, wishy-washy way of relating to people. The easy thing is to, not engage with meaning or responsibility. The easy thing is to just pursue hedonistic pleasure. It's actually quite hard to pursue morally virtuous things. But it's also, I think, necessary if you want to have, a fulfilling relationship for most people. I think there are some people who really can just engage in that like purely transactional, hedonistic way of relating to people, but it's not a lot of people that can do this. And so I think you have to be really careful when you're, getting rid of these, traditional roles and modes of relating to each other, because although that can work for some people, a lot of people are going to end up feeling left out. And so I think that one thing that the progressives have done well is that they identify like some toxic elements. And they identify like scenarios where traditional modes of relating to each other aren't working for people. But I think the problem is that like a lot of left-wing people, they just want to tear down. But they don't really understand why those modes of relating to people exist in the first place and what benefit they can actually have. And so I think if you're going to tear down or change the way they operate, you really have to understand the meaning behind them. And so I think that like, if you ever hear a left-wing person say that like, we need to get rid of traditional gender roles, you should ask them to like really articulate what the benefit of traditional gender roles are. And if they can't articulate it, their policy prescription is nonsense. He's fighting Melania, right? That's a really hard boss. I have not beat Melania, to be clear. So
I realized, like, oh, the enemy used to be the skinheads. Now it's these motherfuckers.
Yeah,
they're the ones that are problems.
Betrayal don't come from the enemy. It comes from the allies.
Right?
Bars. That was a bar.
You can't give yourself a bar.
Nah, I can.
That was. Listen, I give you bars when you don't even ask for it.
But
I'm telling you that one.
Yeah,
that's not a bar.
That's a bar.
That's not a bar.
That's a bar. That's a bar.
But anyways,
can it be a rod?
That's
pause.
That's good. That was a big pause, bro. Go get you some fucking.
I was thinking, we're not doing that. We're not doing that.
No, we're not doing that.
Yeah, this boss is really fucking hard. I haven't beaten Melania.
The past fucking years, I've been harassed by police.
Yeah.
All the time. It's not even them that bother me no more. It's not them. It's not the police.
Yeah.
I feel like, I don't know, somewhat, I was pretty burnt out on Elden Ring.
Police.
At this point. Yeah, and he only has 10 vigor.
Yeah,
I'm just saying, we've seen it different.
I'll be so fucking impressed if he can beat Melania with the fucking Bloodhound's Fang and 10 vigor.
It's nothing like it was before. And I think most people would acknowledge, like, racism today is not what it was before.
What is this fucked up comment?
Listen, I have barely any watchers.
The one that bothers me the most and
I don't think that I'll get clapped. Like, I'm not a partner. I'm not an affiliate even.
Yeah.
And motherfucker, I'm left.
You know what, though?
But yeah, oh yeah, I have like, I'm gonna force everyone to watch my YouTube. Sucks that I won't be able to stream this, on Twitch, because I've got so many lovely Twitch viewers right now. Mm. You guys are incredible. Mm. I love you, Twitch viewers. You're wonderful. The panel starts in 10, right? I won't kick out the Twitch viewers until the panel starts properly. I am dual streaming on Twitch and YouTube. Yeah, the panel's gonna get streamed on YouTube, I think. Yeah, I'll drop the YouTube link for sure. I should talk to you, Fuentes, and dress like a boy. You only need 3 concurrent viewers to get affiliate, to be clear. Hes dispensity, yeah. You only need 75 concurrent viewers to get partner. But I got denied for partner despite having much more than 75 over and over. Just because like I got it so quickly, like the 75, and people were like, but yeah, I'll end the stream pretty soon here, so definitely. Wait, no, wait, that's not the right, that's the restream. Not gonna take you anywhere. So yeah, definitely hop into the YouTube chat. YouTube, that's what we're doing. My loyal army, my beautiful army, the greatest people on Twitch will soon also become the greatest people on YouTube. Superior even to Stevens, superior to Destiny. even superior to Destiny. Yeah. The banger, the ultimate link is there in chat. Join it. YouTube comments. Yeah, Destiny is the reason why I'm forcing you to switch. And the panel is going to start in like 5 minutes. Okay. Format, font, make it big. Wait, all right. The panel starts in 5. All right, and I'm going to use the restroom. I'll be back. I have returned. All right. Ending the Twitch stream. Okay. Join the YouTube stream, the superior stream. Wait. Oh my god. There we go. Join the YouTube stream. It's just YouTube chatters. Look at this. We got rid of the Twitch chatters. Yeah, you guys, Twitch chatters are. Ugh. YouTube chatters incredible. You guys. The best people in the world. YouTube chat. Oh. I also prefer YouTube streams actually. But yeah, Fanatics hosting this panel. Which we'll see how that goes. The Destiny subreddit was like, oh, why is this Fanatic guy hosting? I think the thing is that like The way the fanatic hosts is that he's like he can be very involved sometimes in the discussion, which I think is frustrating for people. While at the same time having this pretense of like total uninvolvement. And I think that's what you'll, take issue with. Oh. Okay, I wasn't sure because I couldn't hear anyone. Oh wait, I'm not muted. No, I'm muted. Wait. Are we? Oh my fucking god. Hold up. Where's the fucking fanatic?
What? Oh, you're just not gonna say anything? Okay, that's cool.
Oh, Steven, hello.
No,
We're
don't worry about
both
it.
waiting.
Oh, I don't want to talk to you now. You don't want to talk to me? That's cool.
Wow, you changed so quickly, like the tides. Unbelievable. How's Melania? I have not beat her. She seems really, really hard.
Honest to God, I think that there are way harder bosses than her. The only thing that's hard is she has
Really?
one move that's really hard to dodge.
Water
But I think if you can
fountains.
survive that one move, I don't think the rest of the fight is that bad. Like she telegraphs most of her abilities really hardcore, and she's really easy to stagger compared to every other boss in the game. So it feels like if you can survive like her one crazy bullshit combo, it feels like it'd be a pretty easy fight. But...
Yeah, no, I've just died to that combo like over and over.
Oh, gotcha. Is your character like really squishy or?
Yeah, I was playing on like a mage character, and
Uh-huh.
I like the stabby sorceries. Those are really fun.
Mhm.
But like they don't allow you to get like the sick critical hits if someone's staggered. So
Mhm.
maybe not like the ideal character for fighting her. And also I've got like talismans to like lower my health and stuff. But yeah, she's tough. So if and when you beat her with your 10 vigor, I will be extremely impressed.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm in.
Kai Clips, can you join the what is it? The StreamYard?
Toph, we weren't
Oh!
in the Discord, but I was saying you have a very cute top. I like the polka dot top.
I like this top too. It's really
cute on you.
Thank
It
you.
looks really good with like your hair color, actually.
With
Yeah,
the
it's a good
blonde.
combo.
Okay, cool.
Mhm. Yeah, good vibe.
Hopefully my stream puts up with this. Might brick it. Who knows?
Typically, people just because you don't need to do your video on Discord.
Oh, let's go.
Yeah, you
Video
just turn
off.
the video off. Yeah, and you just turn the video on Discord. I mean, on StreamYard.
There we go.
Let me see. Let me add you really quickly.
I think we're good to go, guys.
Oh shoot! No, I didn't mean to do that.
Perfect.
Okay. And is Anna in? Is Anna not in the Discord? Not too far behind on schedule. Does she not know? Let me try to unmute. Hey Anna, we need you to come into the Discord, please.
What? Can you explain to me again? I always ask every random fuck show host why they do this. Why do you use StreamYard? Why don't you just use Discord video? Why separate over two things?
I think StreamYard was better for capturing purposes, I guess, for some reason. And then I don't know, like that was just like the way that everyone did it, and so then I just did it the exact same way. And then by that point, I ended up like paying for a year of Discord StreamYard because it was just more financially. You save money by doing it annually, and so then I was like, okay, well, I'm just gonna go ahead and use this thing because I already paid money for it.
Okay.
Um,
That's bullshit, but okay.
I mean, that's all I can give you.
It's
Yeah,
bullshit.
terrible reason. Unbelievable.
Where the freak is Anna? What's she doing?
I think StreamYards has names as well. That might be a big part of it.
Oh yeah, that was the other thing too. And then StreamYard, it was easier to manipulate to put like who goes in what area and what row and all that stuff. What's she doing?
Also, hello, friends.
Hello, Stardust.
How are you guys doing?
Doing good.
There we go. Oh, Anna joined. So you know what? Go ahead and decline. Hit that decline. Hit yes. I'm in the middle of a raid in Lost Ark.
Are you serious? The start time is 4 minutes ago. How are you in the middle of a raid?
No, I didn't think it would take that long because I didn't know.
Oh
I didn't
my
expect this
God.
to fail, but it's fine. Don't worry.
Lost Ark, isn't that supposed to be the WoW killer?
I don't know if it's gonna be no WoW killer. It's a good game though. It's actually particularly good in my opinion. Like, I think it's insane. I think the boss fight mechanics are like literally some of the best in like ever created.
Ever created. Wow.
Yeah, I would say so, man.
Okay.
All right. So anyway, thank you guys for being part of another Fanatic panel. I took the time to speak to every new person about like what's expected in the panel and like what the goal is. And I'm glad that everybody's here and able to oblige. I didn't have the personal conversation with Destiny because I don't think it would do anything. He's going to troll anyway, as he always does.
I'm not even trolling right now.
Huh?
There's a serious conversation. Why would I troll during this conversation?
My nigga, you literally troll during every single conversation. Like,
Okay.
I think you literally have a goal of like, how can I piss somebody off and make them get unhinged and then like disrupt the panel, like literally every time. That's your game.
Something I would do, but okay.
It sounds exactly like what you're doing.
Character skewed over. All right.
I have
Anyway,
to say, I feel left out. I haven't had the special one-on-one fanatic.
you did it, not so Erudite. You're absolutely
DTR.
right.
We haven't defined the relationship yet.
It's probably because you don't troll a whole lot, right?
You
Well,
don't troll, and like the
time to get
first
started.
time, I thought like so I learned the lesson that you have to tell every single person like after like a few mishaps. But prior to that, I didn't know that I needed to do that. So like I wasn't doing it with every single person. And you've already been on the panel and have like displayed that you know how to do it, like how to have an actual conversation.
Fanatic was very, very firm with me. He said, you can't troll in this
That's
panel.
it.
Unlike Destiny, I'm very mature.
Yeah, well, you know what's
very
crazy is
adult-like.
I didn't like for Stardust. I didn't tell her not to do like blood sports or anything. Hers was like, yeah, please just don't troll, because like I don't think she ever does like screaming and yelling and acting crazy.
I do some screaming and yelling, but
Really?
yeah, you've never. Okay, well that's fine. I mean,
It's good. No, I've never encountered that, but I mean, it's good that you're capable. Because there's a place for that for everywhere. But anyway, listen, we're gonna go ahead and start. This is the Fanatic show, the Fanatic panel. We're gonna be discussing rape culture, sexual assault, and I guess kind of the media and its influence there as well. I'm thankful that you guys were all here. Originally, this conversation was inspired by a person named Katie. She wasn't able to make it. I guess she kind of felt mentally drained after our hour conversation, and she said she didn't want to debate something like this. So, I mean, I can't do anything about that. But I did find a panel, I think, of very able and capable people to discuss this. So we're going to jump right into it. As usual, the purpose of this is to have a conversation. Not everyone will disagree, but it's okay. We can still like explore the nuance around this topic and have an interesting conversation. Thank you guys for all being a part of that and understanding that goal. So the existence of rape culture is contested. Coined in the 1970s, the stated goal was to bring awareness to the fact that rape was significantly more pervasive than public knowledge of its occurrence. Whereas rape culture is defined as a setting in which rape is pervasive and normalized due to societal attitudes about gender and sexuality. Is this real? Is it something that we should be concerned about? So I guess we're going to go ahead and let everyone give their opening statements on that. Freak Kai disappeared. Starting with Taftaj.
Oh boy. Yeah, so Taftaj or April, if that's easier. I don't think we have a rape culture. I think we have a casual sex culture and a hookup culture and a culture which encourages ways of engaging with sex which are dangerous and frivolous. And I think that like the natural result of stripping a lot of meaning from sex and a lot of the seriousness that comes with it. When you boil sex down to purely just like, seeking this consent, I think you create an incentive for incredibly transactional, temporary relationships. And with those kinds of relationships, you also get bad sex and you get a lot of boundaries which are easily crossed. And so I think that like what you really should be concerned about, if you're concerned about like the modern prevalence of, boundary crossing, is addressing that casual hookup culture and teaching people that they need to engage with it a lot more responsibly or avoid that kind of culture at all. And so, yeah, we'll get into the details of that, but that's my general position.
Absolutely. Okay. Thank you. Great take. Not so erudite. Would you like to follow up?
Sure. So yeah, I guess my position is that I think like when it comes to like sex and sexual harassment and sexual assaults, there's definitely a problem within our culture. To label that rape culture feels inaccurate and somewhat inflammatory, particularly when you have like internationally cultures that like actually legitimately do more so normalize and have a much higher prevalence rate of like full on rape. I do think that there is a problem with boundary crossing. I do think that there are issues, right? Like, it would be nice to see sexual assault rates decrease over time. And I'm really for educating that. But I think when we get into like these inflammatory words like rape culture and stuff, we actually like steal away from the nuance necessary to like properly educate women and men and individuals about how to have like safe sex and how to assert boundaries in dating and whatnot.
Okay. Stardust.
So I do think it used to be the case in that circumstances and the behavior of a victim was heavily scrutinized before anyone took a sexual misconduct case at face value. With things like the Me Too movement and other movements, it seems like the attitude around that has changed to automatically believe all people when they come out with an allegation. And I don't think that that's healthy either. I think that with that being the case, we've kind of like flipped innocent until proven guilty on its head in like a public sphere. We've flipped it on its head pretty badly, and I think that actually feeds back into like into this kind of this really toxic kind of like feedback loop where it's like scrutinize everything but and don't believe anybody, and then no, you have to believe everybody, and how dare you scrutinize things. So that's kind of how it seems like there's like this very bad kind of cycle going. So
Okay. And Kai Clips, can you answer the question? Does rape culture exist? Yeah.
Yeah, so I think it's kind of difficult because a few other panelists have talked about kind of the colloquial rape culture in that it's like non-consenting individuals. I think it's a little more complex than that. I think kind of Stardust was, well, maybe not so much, but I think I'll allude to the fact that certain elements of society can build into rape culture in the sense that it desensitizes people to, forms of violence within relationships. The kind I've interacted with a lot is just the kind of the opposite of rape culture, which is that oftentimes there's like a sexual relationship between a man and a woman, and then a few months down the line, and that relationship being totally consensual, a few months down the line, the woman will change her mind as to what she understood the relationship to be. And then in 99% of cases, the guy is the one who receives all of the blame. And I think there's an inappropriate infantilization of women when it comes to that, thinking that women can, are always the ones who are innocent and are never the ones who encourage a sexual interaction. And I think that gets us into some hot water pretty quick societally.
Okay. And Destiny.
When I think of rape culture, I think of like two kind of different things that kind of get smushed together into the same thing. The first concept of rape culture, which I think is a little bit older, is this idea that I think Stardust mentioned this, that women kind of aren't really believable, that a lot of rape is made up, and people are kind of uncomfortable even talking about there being like rape. So that was a conversation that we weren't having publicly. And then I think the Me Too movement kind of blew that up. So I think largely we've gotten over that generally, with some exception that like women have a better time today coming out and being taken seriously, especially online, than they used to in the past. Whether that's gotten too far or not is another conversation. And then there's kind of like this second understanding of rape culture, which I think more broadly applies to kind of the dating habits that we have in society, where women are seen as the gatekeepers of sex and men are seen as like the chasers of sex. And then in that society, men kind of have a bunch of tools at their disposal that they utilize in order to get sex from the women. And when talking about that type of rape culture, I don't really know if that's really been addressed at all yet, because we don't really have conversations around like consent or sex. We just kind of have like really juvenile screaming like "don't rape" at people. Yeah.
Okay. And last, Anna.
Well, it seems like I'm the only one that is actually engaged with the research on this topic, because the research suggests that absolutely rape culture is still alive and well in the US. There's plenty of literature reviews that prove this. So I don't know what else to say on that, except that basically rape culture is about it's about the sociocultural attitudes about victims and rape that are pervasive in a society, and the fact that rapes are still extremely underreported from both men and women, and also the fact that rape myth acceptance, which is an academic term, there's plenty of research on this, again, rape myth acceptance is still highly prevalent. So this means that people, despite the Me Too movement and everything, maybe that helped a little, but despite that, people still believe things that are false about rape and victims. And that is what rape culture is, and there's really no denying that it exists.
Okay, the floor is open. Yeah, you guys can go ahead and have at it.
I think the problem is that like the question or the debate is really about like what is the appropriate term for this. I think we can agree that there are misconceptions about how rape occurs and the level at which sexual assault occurs. But whether or not we actually label that rape culture is what's contentious. I think we also have, disagreements about or misunderstandings regarding murder rates, and what constitutes murder and other forms of physical violence. But I think it's too much to say that we live in like a murder culture. That term is really, I think, where the debate is centered around. And I think the problem with the term is that it fails to really identify where the problems are. And it just sort of like loosely blames men or, paints men as like, the progenitors of this. And what we really need to do is like control men's behavior. And I think that the problem is a lot deeper than that and goes really into, how we engage with sex as a culture in general. And so I think when we reframe the conversation to be about like hookup culture or casual sex, I think we're getting towards like why those rapes and that sexual assault is actually coming. But yeah.
Yeah, I don't disagree that there is some form of like rape culture, as people call it. I just think that it's significantly changed from what it used to be, right? It used to be that every single piece of information surrounding a case coming out would be heavily scrutinized. Everything, right down to like what somebody was wearing was scrutinized. And while that wasn't healthy in itself, I also don't think it's healthy that we now kind of exist in a space where when somebody comes out with an allegation, we have we've decide to deem somebody 100% guilty on a public stage before they're given a chance to even defend themselves, or for the actual case itself to be like moved forward in the legal system, things like that. And also there's also the very real problem of just miscommunication with relationships. The fact that men are kind of taught to be pursuers, right? And they're taught that some men are taught that women are playing hard to get, right? And some women are taught to play hard to get. So this does create a lot of deeper issues that complicate this rape culture even more. And I think it really does feed into itself. It makes things harder for everybody on all sides.
I think something that's really important that kind of gets brought up is initially when the Me Too thing started, it was about holding people accountable that were able to escape accountability. I promise I'm not trying to trigger you with this one, Fanatic, but I think that there were some people that for whatever reason managed to evade the legal system, but when an accusation would come out, you would find out that like sometimes dozens of women would have a similar story dealing with a guy, and it would seem like, okay, it seems like this person was for whatever reason able to escape accountability in the justice system. So when they couldn't find justice in the legal routes, they kind of went like, I don't want to say the social media route, but like the public square route basically. And we went from this idea that like maybe some especially powerful men could escape accountability, but with enough women coming forward, you know, you kind of have some accountability. We went from that to if a single woman accuses a single guy of anything, it's automatically 100% true. And I think the problem is when you set the bar that low, now we've seen, even in just our space, that that's not a good threshold for it's not a good threshold for those types of accusations. And what's worse is it kind of reinforces those prior beliefs that, well, hold on, maybe we do need to be really skeptical of some women making these accusations, because then you find out that some come out, you read through everything, and you're like, okay, well, this was kind of bullshit, or this was kind of shoddy, and then it reinforces those views that maybe we should be more skeptical about the claims being made when it's just coming from a single person.
I mean, I think we should also appreciate like how exceptional the situation and the circumstances are that women are even doing this in the first place. If you look at like other cultures, like in China, where women are still receiving like major pushback from trying to, you know, discuss their experiences with party officials, or look back into history and like the relative inability for women to speak up in most cultures. You know, the ability of women today to really hold powerful men accountable is really incredibly unique. And I think it speaks to like, you know, how far the culture has changed when it comes to taking rape and sexual assault seriously. So to cast it as like this rape culture again, I think it like, you know, it sort of obscures that cultural change that has occurred.
So where are your studies? So where are your studies that show
what?
that any of this is true? Both of you. Where are the studies on this?
On women
Show me
being
the
able
studies.
Wait, they show that what's true?
What you just said.
that women are able to hold powerful men accountable now more than in other times in history.
Yeah, where's your proof that this has changed?
Twitter has not existed for most of human history. The internet has not existed for most of human history. If you want to like bring something to the public square, and you're a woman who doesn't have like a lot of economic leeway, you can't vote, your ability to bring information to the public square is severely limited.
And those women still get harassed and death threats and all kinds of things, do they not?
Yeah,
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Both in the past and now.
I would say that again. I think Destiny's on to something with holding powerful men accountable. But what we also see is that this has become about not holding powerful men accountable. It's also become about accusing the average man. And one accusation against an average man, or even like a man who is not powerful, who's disadvantaged in certain ways, can be very, very harmful for that person. So yes, it initially was about holding these powerful people accountable, but now we had to acknowledge at some point that we do see that there are some men who are not powerful, who are being accused and being made into a guilty person in a public sphere before even having their voice heard.
I think it's also I was gonna say, I think it's also really important that like we have a realistic expectation for what we can suspect or expect out of society. Like anybody making any accusation against anybody ever is going to receive some level of public pushback, especially if it's against a celebrity. But that's probably not even
not justified. So don't try and justify it.
It's not a justification. It's about an expectation of like reality. Like if a sports person like loses to another sports person, soccer, basketball, whatever, like those people are going to get hate. If somebody makes an accusation of murder or assault or rape against somebody, they're going to get a level of like hate. If our goal is to say like we need to have a society where somebody can make some accusation and never get hate for it, that's like unrealistic. That expectation.
Or we need to have a society.
We don't want that society.
Or we need to have a society where maybe trauma survivors, there's an understanding of trauma and there's more education of trauma trauma survivors and what victim blaming does to a trauma survivor.
I think you can rope that into like the parts that Destiny and Stardust and myself are trying to bring up, though, and you kind of overshadow the reality that might not be as attractive. Like, sure, we probably agree on this panel that we should provide more support to people who suffer from trauma, but if you get like 70 people, or even just like a dozen people after somebody's been accused of like assaulting somebody or sexually harassing somebody, if 70 people step in afterwards, it is realistic to assume that the fact that accusations have been brought up is now playing a part in the way that people perceive the prior relationship they had with that individual. And it becomes one of these things like, oh, wow, I interacted with so-and-so before and they did something that at the time, like, I totally didn't see as a problem. And maybe I even flirted back. But now that I've got the lens of them being an abuser, I'm going to shape my opinion of them that way. So I think for you to say we should just, provide more support for abusers, I think that's like,
trauma
it's not a
survivors.
disagreeable point, and it doesn't address what we've been raising as a problem with the way, the response
Because
to
you've
rape
shown no
culture is
proof.
now.
Well, I
Because
think
you've
there's
shown no
also-
proof to
there's
back
a
up any of your
victim
bullshit.
culture.
That's why.
Look,
Wait,
Destiny,
hold on.
Destiny
Can-
said something
can we-
really. Destiny
one
said
second.
something really
Wait,
simple.
one second, Cocklips. 1 second. Yeah, we let's try to be chill. Oh, is my mic not muted? It isn't. Let's try to be chill, Anna. But yeah, like so you're asking them for proof of what exactly?
That any of the bullshit that they said is real.
Okay, but Destiny said like, yeah, back in the day, it was about holding people accountable. I don't know if you want like a study of like the origins of Me Too, but I think we all.
I mean,
saw,
what?
like,
How is it different? How is it different now?
How is it different now?
People are comfortable coming
Because
forward
you
now,
think
right?
it is.
phenomenon.
No, because you
it's
think
a
it
social
is.
phenomenon.
Again,
I mean,
back
somebody
it
at
up.
your school.
Back it up
hold
with
on.
proof.
Here,
There's
so
a
the
lot of
backup-
power
Well, the
in being
backup
a
would be:
victim.
has there ever been a culture that existed where people feel comfortable going on a big social media platform and sharing their like rape, abuse, or sexual harassment stories? I'm not aware of that ever existed in my lifetime. Say for maybe like 5 or 6 years ago when it started to get really popular with twitlongers on Twitter. Has that type of culture ever existed?
There's always been accusations that have existed.
We're not talking about accusations. We're talking about somebody coming out, sharing an
Why are you
accusation.
framing it like it's a problem?
I'm not framing it like it's a problem. I'm just saying that it's something that happens now that didn't used to happen. There's people coming out and socially sharing accusations against sometimes very public figures on social media platforms. That's a new behavior that has never
And this is
existed
a great thing.
I haven't said it's not.
well-
And you agree that it's a great thing, so then we agree. That's our source, is what's
Good.
I think we've agreed that, or at least
Wait,
I've
hold
said
on,
that.
hold on.
I've said that rape culture is. I've said that rape culture is real. It is a thing, but we have to acknowledge the ways that things have changed now. The Me Too movement was good for holding like powerful people accountable, and we can't deny that. Like it had a worldwide effect. Like the Me Too movement actually took off huge in India, and I'm sure it took off huge in other countries too, where patriarchal society is even more heavily enforced, right? Where rape is even more common. So yeah, there's I'm not saying that there's anything bad about this movement happening. It's the results of it. We have to acknowledge that there is the result in which men who are not powerful and men who are also very disadvantaged are going to inevitably face repercussions of the attitude change we've had towards sexual assault and the way that we view it in the public sphere, right?
Erudite, please.
I was just going to say, I think we also really need to be careful when we're talking about like academic studies around this stuff, because like a lot of the studies around like rape and stuff like that, it's really, really difficult to actually do really strong empirical.
No, it's really not erudite.
Wait.
No, it's really not.
Hold on.
It's hard to do
Anna,
sociological
wait,
studies
hold
on
on,
most
hold on,
things.
Because she's
hold
wrong.
on.
So I'm just supposed to
Hold
let her
on.
be wrong.
Anna.
We're both in a
Anna.
master's program, and I
Anna.
know this as well as you do.
Jesus, listen,
Okay.
Anna. Hold on, wait. Look, the purpose of this is to have a conversation, and even if you're getting frustrated or triggered, you can easily just let someone finish their sentence before you interject. Like that's just how a civil conversation goes with adults. So I'm
Alright,
asking
fine.
you to please be an adult in this scenario. Let her finish her statement and then address it.
All right.
Thank you. Go
Okay.
ahead, Erudite.
So a lot of these studies rely on retrospective and epidemiological reports. So there's issues where immediately you can't make causational statements. And a lot of this is retrospective reports are really difficult because the way that you phrase questions really matters, right? And so you have to be really careful in how, like self-reports are rough. So for example, I'm sure like probably, Annie, you're more aware of like the 1999 like Wraith myth acceptance scale. When I look through that, I think it's a decently solid scale, but the psychometric properties haven't been tested super closely, right? And so like the idea that like we just need studies to prove all these things, it's like a lot of times society is changing at a rate, particularly with technology, that research can't keep up with super well. So that doesn't mean that we shouldn't do the studies or that we shouldn't strive to have more empiricism about these topics. I'm super for that. But to just be like, well, I need studies to prove like Destiny's claim, I'm like, it probably doesn't exist, but the lack of evidence doesn't actually prove that the phenomenon isn't necessarily going on. We have to talk about like things that we can observe anecdotally and then what we can support on what we see empirically and kind of do our best to tease between these two things.
The other thing is that like we're talking about these scenarios which are relatively infrequent and have to deal with like relatively few people. So when you look at like the big Me Too cases, you know, we're talking about like populations of maybe like 24 people, right? Like it's really hard to do or come to any meaningful like scientific conclusion based on so little data.
Anna,
That's why,
you can respond.
right. Well, I don't know why you're even bringing that up as it's a non-issue, since, I mean, I wouldn't bring up studies that only use a small population. And also, that's not entirely true, Erudite, and you should know better, because the rape myth acceptance scale is still empirically validated. And if something is empirically validated, we can still certainly use it.
Yeah, you could use it, right? But you get to like assign levels of weight that we assign to things. So for example, right, a new anxiety scale that has just been created might be psychometrically validated within itself, but until it's been tested robustly cross-culturally and a whole bunch of other psychometric properties to make it valid, we only assign a certain level of weight. We also only assign a certain level of weight to self-reports in general compared to other things that can be more observable, like behavioral phenomenon. Now, in the case of sexual assault, where a ton of sexual assault goes unreported, that's exceedingly difficult research to do, right? Which is why we get left with a lot of incredibly inductive studies that I'm not dismissing. And I'm not saying that there aren't problems with sexual assault. There aren't problems with women being harassed. I'm saying that when we're like trying to be like, just give me the science, it's like, it's actually difficult. The science isn't there. And there's a problem with that.
The only way to accurately test trauma and the experience of sexual violence is through asking people. And that's the only way to really test that. So, I mean, unless we can figure out how to mind read people.
But at what point does that like cover for the data? Like, you can't just say, well, it's really difficult to, pull people differently or to actually measure it and to change our methodology or vary it. But just saying that doesn't make your claim or your reliance on the data more significant. Just because all the data that exists needs to or is being done in a way that's not perfect doesn't make that data any more reliable. Just means that there's not many good ways of doing it.
I don't see how it's not reliable. What do you mean?
Well, I'm saying like you can't write off I forget who it was, maybe it was Not So Erudite, but you can't write off the description of, maybe there's some problems in self-reporting data. You can't just write that off as like adding to the validity of the studies.
No, but you also can't just write off the data, can you?
Well, but
I think we all agree that like when it comes to things like rape, and even when it comes to like crime stats, self-reporting is sometimes the only way we can collect data. This is why when you're looking up like crime data, sometimes you're digging through self-victimization reports, right? You're getting reports on crime that's happened in a specific area because, as we know, not all crime gets reported. Same thing with rape stuff. So I don't think anybody is saying that self-reporting is bad. I don't think even Erudite, I don't think you would say that, right? But we have to acknowledge the limits of that data, and we have to be a little bit realistic when we try to say like, this is proven. And it's like the strength of the claim that you can make with such retrospective data is going to be pretty limited, more so than I think the comfort level of somebody saying like, we've proven this with it. Like, you wouldn't make a super solid claim about it. We can only point to it and kind of like infer from there, I think.
Yeah, that's kind of
the
what
only
I was
reason
at.
to bring it up is to dismiss the data.
That's kind of like what I was.
It's not to dismiss the data. It's to say like,
yes,
what
it
level?
is.
Wait,
no, it's not.
Wait, hold on. Kai, then Anna.
So yeah, that was kind of the point I was getting at. We don't have to say the data's awful. We'll try to get the best data we can, but admitting that the data is not flawless doesn't mean that, or that all the data is not flawless, doesn't mean you can just jump into it as like, well, now we just rely on all of it. We need to go into examining however much data there is, understanding that there are limitations. But it doesn't
and that's
look like
my
you're
job, not
understanding-
yours.
Well, yeah, but you're coming at this like, well, because all the data has this, kind of flaw, and because, the self-reporting data is not great,
Not flawed.
that's the only data we have, so let's just rely on it. And Destiny and Not So Erudite are all just saying, maybe we should walk into this understanding the limitations and not relying on it as if there are none.
No, they're saying that we should be believing their anecdotal experiences of Twitter, people on Twitter more so. And I'm saying no.
Is that what you're saying, Destiny and Not So Erudite? 'Cause
Well,
that's
well,
not
actually,
That's what
I'm hearing.
Destiny was saying.
Even framed uncharitably, yeah, I would say that. Like, for instance, I think that there are
Right,
some
exactly.
social. I think there are some social claims that we can make that I'm not going to be able to give you a study for. So, for instance, men tend to be favored for actors well into their later years, and women tend to get pushed out very early. But I can't give you a study showing that. I can just point to every single Hollywood movie that has like a 65-year-old man paired with a 22-year-old woman. Or I could show you how statements, qualitative data, I guess, from actresses that'll say, yeah, I got this job. I think it was because I was 20 years old. Or, actresses getting cast when they're 17 for some films, cast as adults just because people that. But I can't give you like a study to prove that. We can all kind of just look at the social phenomenon and go, yeah, this is definitely a thing that happens.
That's not true because I vehemently disagree with your anecdotal evidence of what happens on Twitter. So
Wait,
no,
okay, hold on, wait, hold on, wait. I want to be clear. Hold
the
on.
basis is that women are still treated horrifically.
That's not the claim. The claim that I don't think anybody disagrees with that. Here is the claim that I think that everybody or at least
Victims are not believed.
Okay, chill. The claim is that in the past there were no social platforms for women to come together and make accusations against men that can't be held accountable in other ways. Now that platform exists. By definition, women receive more support for those reports now because they didn't even exist in the past than they would have in the past. I'm not saying there's no harassment.
They're getting terrorized more.
That's a separate claim, and it's not relevant to what I'm saying.
Well, that's also like a bad argument. It's like, yeah,
No, it's
now
not.
that you're
happens.
just let me finish and I'll explain it. You're saying they get terrorized more. Yeah, they've taken, this issue of somebody, getting canceled, somebody going Me Too, and you're taking it to potentially hundreds of thousands of people. Of course, you're going to have more backlash. The backlash as a proportion.
Okay, so you're justifying them being terrorized. I don't care about your opinion then.
That's not what I was.
That's literally what you
I
just
don't
said.
think anybody's justifying it. I
this
think
is
we can
crazy.
agree I think we can agree that
It's not okay that for anyone to
Hold
get
on,
terrorized.
Anna. You can't just
agree.
interrupt.
We agree
Wait,
on
hold
that.
on. Wait. Can I pause for just a second? Anna, you can't just interrupt every time like you want to say something. Everyone else is taking their time and acting like adults. I'm asking you to do the same thing here. Not everyone's just talking over everyone. You have a point to be made. There's not that many people here. It's a civil conversation.
I'm the only one
Everyone
who is again like you
Okay.
dogpiled me basically with all these fucking people who don't believe in the data.
Okay, so does
Wait,
the
what
dog-
did?
wait,
What data are we
wait.
appealing
Does
to?
the
Okay,
dog
sorry.
pile, does the dog pile is this a circumstance that you're uncomfortable with, such that we should
I
do
mean,
a
why
different
didn't
panel
you
or
tell
something?
me that I was going to be on a panel with people who everyone apparently disagrees with rape culture? You just set
I
me up.
don't disagree.
I apologize if you feel
disagree.
set up. Is this a conversation that you should be removed from? Do you think that this is a conversation that the environment that it's too hostile for you?
No, I'll be fine.
Okay, so listen. I get that you're saying you're going to be fine, but your response is saying that basically because you feel dogpiled that you're going to do this. So if you're not going to be able to be civil, if you're not going to be fine, then we should just remove you from the circumstance because I don't want you feeling dogpiled. That was not my intention here. But if this is something that you can't do, then obviously we need to do that. Like I need you to actually read the room and be respectful moving forward. Okay?
All right.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Could we
Stardust.
maybe start with like
Uh,
concessions, like things that we can agree with, and then like maybe build up so that like I don't know, there's some movement
Let's
in the
lower the
conversation.
temperature in
Yeah,
here.
Sure.
I
First,
think
let's start us go and then we'll do that.
I think that Anna, I think you're not looking at this in a very nuanced way. I don't think we disagree that much. I think that so I've said that yes, rape culture is a thing, but the circumstances around how we deal with um, allegations of assault in a public stage have changed, that our attitude towards it has changed, and that feeds back into the toxicity of what rape culture is. It feeds back into, well, if there are people who are making these claims and our automatic response is to automatically make people guilty, maybe we should be really scrutinizing this more. And so it feeds back into us heavily scrutinizing all of the circumstances around somebody coming forward with an assault case, right? And we've still got plenty of men who are afraid to come forward. We've still, so these are all real things. It's just we have to acknowledge that there are men who are not powerful. There are marginalized men who are very significantly affected by these allegations that come out.
I'm not sure it's just men. I mean,
Well,
women
sure.
get falsely accused also.
Sure.
What's the data on women versus men getting falsely accused?
The data on false accusations is that they're extremely rare. David
like-
Lisak's research, Dr.
but like
David
men-
Lisak.
How
But,
much
like,
weight
men
do you
or
think we
women?
can stock in that data? Because to get that data, you have to have people either admit or be proven that they've made a false allegation, which is going to be difficult data to get, right? Malingering data is
Yes.
notoriously awful to try to acquire.
I just want to know, like, as a proportion of the data that exists, flawed as it may be, what's like the proportion of men to women who get falsely accused?
I haven't actually looked at that, so I can't say.
Okay, so I have a good question. The statistics from RAIN.org claim that 26.4% of females and 6.8% of males experience rape or sexual assault. Do you guys believe that that statistic is accurate?
I think prevalence rates are so difficult in this area. I definitely think it's high, and I think it's higher than it. I mean, obviously, anything above 0% is higher than it should be, right? But I think there's actually serious cause for concern, particularly with intimate partner violence, especially because we saw an escalation of it during COVID. But prevalence rates of anything that's based mostly on even like child abuse is really difficult because there could be two things where both like people forget memories or they feel like abuse didn't happen when we might document it, and other individuals who might hear like a question like about consent and kind of misunderstand it and be like, oh yeah, I've had drunk sex before. And they'll equate that to non-consent. So retrospective data is really difficult to tease through. So like getting an accurate prevalence rate is a nightmare. And if you look up like literally, and like the one like CDC has certain numbers that like I looked through the methodology, it's not terrible methodology, but then the Justice Bureau has different numbers. And then if you look up just like independent epidemiological studies, you get again different numbers. And
Can
so
I-
like
Two questions. So firstly, I linked a paper in chat, a 2020 paper that shows that the increase in reporting of sex-related crimes does seem to have increased after the Me Too stuff, which would show a positive knock-on effect culturally of that happening. And then secondly, just because I'm not a stats loser, not so right. You kept mentioning that like it's hard because these are retrospective. Can you do prospective like rape studies, or what does that mean? When you like, what would be a different way of? I'm curious. Sorry.
Yeah, so that would be prospective. All you could do with those would be allegations of rape that have been brought to trial and then found guilty. Those would be broadly, or you can look at
And we know how
cases that have at least just been brought to the police. Those would be the best you could do with prospective studies. So prospective is also not great because you have the dark
No,
side of
not at all.
prospective studies because lots of people don't report crime.
Those
crime.
are highly flawed, and you know that they are highly flawed because of
Yeah,
so
I'm
many
saying that
The
there's
problem
flaws to
is
them.
all of
Yeah.
them are flawed. All of
Yeah.
these are flawed.
Not
That's
the
the issue.
retrospective
Yes, of course
studies
they are.
far,
For even what
are
we
far
consider
less
sexual
flawed.
assault can be like really flawed. There's a lot of criticisms with that. One study, there's a number that gets cited all the time that 1 out of 6 women have been sexually harassed, and I think that came from literally data from 2 universities. For where that number was pulled from, and it gets cited everywhere, like it's ubiquitous across all of society. So I mean, like all of these things
The
have
rate
their
is
issues.
higher than that.
Maybe.
But
I
we,
don't know.
like
Hard to
Anna,
tell.
course it is.
you and
Yes,
I
it
both just
is.
agreed that there's retrospective issues for sure. And there's this is what I'm saying. Research on this is really difficult because there's issues in either direction we do the study. Probably what we should do is some like numbers between the retrospective and prospective. But where do we draw even that point between the two? Because we know with prospective, we're vastly going to be underrepresenting the problem. And with retrospective, we might be vastly overreporting it. So like and to what extent are we doing this on both sides? And we don't have the answer. So we can't put our finger well on prevalence other than saying there's a problem.
So where are these researchers highlighting the issue with retrospective with retrospective rape surveys? Because I don't see
Sure,
that many.
I can get you a couple. Like there's a lot there. This is like pretty standardly known within epidemiological studies that retrospective
Same thing with
studies of
crime stats
anything,
too, yeah.
because memory's fucking flawed. Like it's just an issue with any retrospective, particularly self-report data. I can get you studies, but it's broadly a pretty well-known control flaw in epidemiological
But the
studies.
issue is that if a trauma victim feels that they've been, I mean, then that trauma ends up being real. I mean,
But that's not.
we
That
know
doesn't mean that a
this.
rape happened.
But that
though.
didn't
That's
mean
the
that a rape
issue.
happened, and there was
We're
a
not asking
perpetrator
if there's
involved.
trauma. We're asking if there was a sexual assault, and,
And
that
that's
doesn't
the
necessarily
issue
follow.
that I brought up at the beginning, right? It's like, especially retrospectively, if you hear that somebody is like is a sexual abuser or something like that, then that is the frame that you're going to be looking at all of your interactions with that person with. And I mean, I don't know if you have
I
data
don't think
refuting
that's
that, but
necessarily the case. No, I don't think that's how like people are that simplistic. I don't.
They
think that's
absolutely are
the case.
simplistic. There's
No,
so
they
much
really
research in the
aren't.
psychology world that shows how susceptible people are. There are like so many classic psychology experiments that show that with some little amount of public pressure, you can get people to say some stuff that they
Yes,
know
but
is
that
wrong.
doesn't mean that someone is going to be tricked into thinking that they've been raped. Or
it's not a
It's not
trick.
about
Okay,
Well,
wait, hold
it's
on.
also about
It's the- it's
public
the-
perception. as
I mean,
well.
false
really-
memory creation is a well-documented phenomenon, and
Yes,
it was
by
a serious
therapists.
problem.
But I would really like to
Yes,
get
I
past.
know.
I would really like to get past like the stats argument, and let's like talk more about like how like the idea of rape culture in general. Maybe if we don't have stats to back it up, do we feel
do.
like okay,
We do have
sure?
stats to back
well,
it up.
that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that do we think that do we think that sexual assault and the prevalence of sexual assault can be influenced by different things? For example, the women's lib movement, or pornography, or the media. How do we think that interacts with rape culture? Can we get to that part?
I think inherently media and anything that's socioculture is inherently going to infect social behavior, right? It's going to change our understandings of consent. It's going to understand or change our conception of this like gatekeeping male pursuer dynamic that's like kind of weird and like creates like a lot of like bad positions as well for people. And so I would say all of these things contribute. To what extent, sure, we can argue about that, but like absolutely these things contribute. And it's probably important for us to figure out which things contribute the most to particularly problematic or like consent pushing behaviors from either partner in sexual engagements and romantic relationships.
I think there's also, you need to make a distinction, because a lot of times when we talk about solutions to sexual assault or rape, there's a lot that women can do to like protect themselves and put themselves in positions where they're less vulnerable. And just because we like acknowledge that women have this like ability doesn't necessarily mean that they have like the moral responsibility. And I think that like, there's this like classic scenario that people always like propose, where like this woman's at a party and like she's getting drunk, and she's really putting herself in a very vulnerable, dangerous position. And she ends up being, taken advantage of. She ends up being assaulted. The person who's assaulting her is still the one who's like engaging in this moral wrong. They're doing something evil. But we also can acknowledge that like a woman has the ability to like improve her situation and avoid those sorts of scenarios without necessarily placing the moral blame on her. And when we like get into these discussions, I just think it's like good to keep that in mind, that just, if we acknowledge that like women have some power to, manage their danger, that doesn't necessarily mean that women are responsible morally for the danger that, or for sexual assault that might happen to them.
Some dead air there. No one else has anything? Kai?
Yeah, so I mean, I've read through some of the research about pornography and like the what was the metric you guys brought up earlier about
The rape myths acceptance
Yes.
scale.
I forget if the research that I was reading mentioned that scale or if it was something else. They had like a
Probably
list of
that one.
questions.
That one's the most pervasive one for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so for me, it from what I've seen, there's not a huge there's not a very easy way to prove, and then there's also not a huge link to pornography increasing the rates of sexual assault, which is something that I originally thought would happen. But from what I have read, it changes people's perception of sex relationships and of violent behavior within relationships in such a way that if so much of this conversation is focused around what people determine to be assault and like the lens they have, I think that certainly has a major effect on what people consider their own trauma or abuse. If they've had this behavior normalized and if they've become desensitized to this kind of behavior,
then and we do know that porn has a desensitizing effect. Maybe not in the mind. I'm sure Anna would disagree there, but at least to the material. Then that would most likely have an effect on what people consider to be assault. And I think that letting that permeate, letting sex work or pornography, any of these things that are, in my opinion, by definition, dangerous jobs that engage frequently with these depictions of sex involving violence or other things, we're only kind of inviting in problems with rape or the perception of it.
Taftaj, that touches very heavily on what you do for a living. Do you feel like you have a lot to say to that?
I mean, sort of. I'm in like a unique position in that, like, my day job was just like posting sexy pictures online, but I don't depict like sex or, that sort of, I don't depict any sex between people really, or a lot of like self-sex. So it overlaps. I know that like people have brought up the prevalence of like choking in pornography, and how when people engage with pornography that depicts these violent or these BDSM sex acts, and you go into sex and you're very new to it and you don't have a lot of experience, people report like, oh, this guy like tried to choke me because that's what he thought was appropriate, and he thought that's how sex works. So I think, yeah, a lot of people do get like instruction for how sex operates from pornography. And the reality is that like a lot of pornography, the way that it depicts sex is a very like mythologized way. That's just, it's not accurate to the way sex actually happens in the real world, and really sets people up for failure when they engage with it, thinking it's going to be one way, and it's not that way.
Okay, Stardust. How about you? Do you feel like the things that they're talking about as far as like sex work, pornography, and all of those things, do you think that has any impact on rape culture? And if not on rape culture, do you think that has any negative impacts on just, I guess, kind of society at large, or any of that?
I would need more time to, I think, ponder on that question. But I did want to go back to a point that Kai made that I thought was pretty good, was that generally when somebody's accused in a public manner, everybody who's interacted with that person starts to second guess their interactions with that person. So you think about like a pretty normal interaction you've had with that person, and you start to think, well, was that creepy? Or was this was that a normal interaction? And so even like the best people can fall prey to that type of thinking, right? The most consistent people can fall prey to that type of thinking. And I think that's a pretty important thing to consider, especially when we're talking about, again, like marginalized people who get accused in a public manner. So
yeah, I think there's also
I don't think that's relevant at all. Why would it be relevant?
Well, if we're talking about like, again, how we have flipped the innocent until proven guilty kind of thing on its head in
I don't
certain
think we have at
scenarios.
all.
In certain
So the
scenarios.
flip is that like socially, somebody can be basically seen as guilty before like anything's ever gone to court or any formal charges are made. We've seen
we
that
had a
definitely
whole like
play out.
hashtag believe all women, right? And it's based on that premise that like you should just believe to start.
Well,
and what's like
we can't all like talk like a decimated point in Stardust and into April. Anna, you can respond, and then you can go ahead, Kai.
Oh, I mean, that's because the criminal justice system is notoriously awful when it comes to
You're saying,
rape.
so I said, yeah, but we're saying
Horrible.
something happens, then you're saying it doesn't happen, then we say, yeah, it does happen. You go, oh, well, this is why it happens. So we can,
No,
we
I'm
can
saying
agree,
it doesn't
right?
happen.
Well, if so you're saying that it isn't the case that socially, once somebody is dropped an accusation, people tend to immediately side with the accuser, and then the accused can get in trouble.
Not when it's a woman. No, people don't believe women.
We don't have to even go that far, because we could just say there's some group in society that automatically.
Well, no, we don't have to say some group. We don't have to appeal. This has happened. Like
no,
time and
I
time
am
again,
saying
like
there
in the
is
esports
some
world
group.
and the Twitch world,
There
like
are
we see
other
this.
parties
I've
that get
seen it
accused
happen, but
that
people
are-
don't believe women.
Wait.
Okay, so I understand what you're saying. What I'm talking about, this is why I specifically said the part about the accused person being a marginalized person themselves. If we're talking about a man of color, right? There are
I don't think they even
scenarios.
have to be a marginalized person. I think just any guy can fall victim
Yeah,
to
it could be an average guy. Yeah, it could be. But like these are very these are like very real things that we've observed in popular culture in just like the public sphere. So I think that it's worth acknowledging, right?
Yeah,
Well,
I think it's a
I
robust phenomenon. I mean, we've seen multiple cases of trial. There's entire TikToks dedicated to basically trial by media, where they get a certain couple of claims. It's basically believe victim, and then they go after the individual without any measure of trial or like they don't even vet to ensure that the things are true. And so, like the idea like this isn't happening, that there isn't kind of this like just believe victims. Like the issue is that like when the Me Too movement started, like just believe victims was a good mantra because there was like institutional issues with rape victims coming forward and being
still
dismissed
are.
out of hand. There really isn't. Like there
Yes,
are
there
off cases.
is. The
not
data
really.
shows this. The
Which
data
data?
shows this. I'll show you plenty of it. I can't believe you're actually denying this. This is so dishonest.
What are we
Just link it. I
denying?
mean, you can just link stuff in the Discord and we
Yeah,
can read it.
just
again.
send me the
I
data.
have a ton for you to read then.
Just send me the data rather than like
Good.
just tell me what it
Good.
is, because I work with
Okay.
multiple people who work with sexual violence victims. I've spoken with cops
And
in
I-
the sex violence
And
department.
I
And so this
counseled
idea that like
and I counseled rape victims for 5 years. And let me
Okay,
tell you, it was horrible for all of them.
I'm
Every
sure
single
it
one of them.
was. Okay, Anna,
I don't think
I
there's
have
any
also been a
pro-rape
rape
people on
victim.
the
There's
panel,
nothing
right?
here about me trying to say that rape is good and victims don't suffer. I also have been
You're
a rape victim.
dismissing.
I am not at all dismissing it, and it's frustrating to me
are.
to act like I am. Okay. What I am saying is that the narrative has absolutely shifted, and there is a serious problem. I've worked with tons of rape victims as well. I have also now worked with multiple clients who, as they came out of their addiction, fully owned that they had made a false allegation, and we had to go to the courts together to work through that situation because an innocent individual was incarcerated presently. So the fact that these things don't happen isn't true. Is it the case that more women are probably still sexually assaulted than are false allegations? I fucking hope so. But there are going to inevitably be bad actors, and they're socially incentivized to do so because of the believe victim mantra.
Well, of course they're gonna. If they're addicts, are gonna have had false accusations. There's tons of
Oh,
cluster
that
B
was such a
personality
horrible
disorders
statement to
there.
make. Oh my god. Sorry, I shouldn't
What?
say
I
that.
mean, we all know this is kind of true. I mean, you have the high
Hold on,
prevalence
we
of
should
certain
stop. Wait, chill.
personalities
You can't just
there.
say that you can't believe an addict's rape statement
I'm
because
not
people
saying
that are
that. I'm saying,
addicted, you
of course,
literally.
that's where you're gonna find the false allegations.
Okay, so
People
you're
get
there to know more than me about this,
really
but I'm
dumb.
pretty sure that people that are addicted to drugs are some of the people, or people that are like in sex work. These are the types of people that have the most trouble being taken seriously because of statements like what you just said, like, "Oh, they're a fucking druggie, they're probably making it up," or like, "Oh, they do."
Yeah, I
prostitution,
didn't
they're probably
say
making it up."
that though. I'm saying that that's of course you're gonna probably find more in that population. Yeah, that's because of the
Okay.
personality correlates that go along with that population.
Okay, so let me ask a
So
question.
you're not saying that you can't trust what they're saying
No.
because they're an addict. You are saying that, well, of course there's going to be a high population of people lying about it because they're addicts.
That's a dunk. You're trying to dunk. It's okay. We've already gotten past that. So let me ask Anna. Do you
No,
think?
that's not what I'm saying.
Okay, good. Anna, do you think that there's an underreporting of male sex sex assault victims? Do you think that there's an underreporting of that?
The
Or do you
empirical
think
data supports that there's an underreporting for women and men. More so men, but there's still for women as well.
Sure. So then
Our
you would say
culture is still extremely hostile to female victims.
But
that
less than
come
it
out.
used to be.
Yeah, less than it used to be, but
That's
it's
all
still
we're saying. That's all anybody
really
here has been
prevalent.
saying, I think.
Yeah, that was my whole point
Okay.
in the beginning.
Nobody
No,
was
that's not what you've been
disagreeing.
saying.
Yes.
Nobody was disagreeing with the fact that like rape culture is a thing. It is specifically that things are less harsh than they used to be.
You're making it sound like now things have been completely flipped and that, oh my gosh, all
Nobody's
these
saying
men, these
that.
poor
No
men,
one has
all these
said that.
false rape accusations,
No one
and
has
that's
said
not
that.
true.
It's
Everyone has
okay.
agreed
First
of the
in here and
direction
said
of the
that.
data. Everyone
So-
has agreed with the direction of the data. Like no one's questioning that.
It's okay. So it's all right. So there was a miscommunication. It seems like now that
No, there was no miscommunication.
Sure, it's okay. I'm sorry. There's a misunderstanding.
Thank
That's
you.
what I mean. A misunderstanding, and so therefore it seemed like everybody was coming to like some people were not fully trying my best. Jesus. So it sounds like now at least we're on the same page. Then wait,
There's
hold on,
still a
Anna.
huge issue
And it
here.
sounds like now that we are on the same page, at least, so then it does seem like everyone here does believe that rape culture to some degree does exist, right?
No, what
Okay,
does
wait.
that
Here's
mean? To
here's a
some
few
degree.
statements I think everyone here agrees on. Okay, one, the rape culture, whatever we want to call it today, is better than it was 10, 20, 30 years ago. Two, there are still problems. Okay. Three, women have an easier time coming out today than they did 10, 20, 30 years ago. But four, there are still problems with them coming out where they get a lot of pushback. Five, there are some very small percentage of rape accusations that are fake. Six, people are still a little bit too cautious around most accusations because they don't recognize that that's a very small percentage of the overall amount of accusations, right? I think everybody here agrees with all of these statements.
Yeah, I think we agree with like the facts. The question is just
Okay.
whether or not we label it rape culture, right? I think that's where the disagreement is.
I don't care what you want to label it as.
Well, but that's kind of important because
Yeah.
something that Tav said earlier is that like, so I gave like my second definition of rape culture, which is one where like men are expected to be the pursuers and women are like the gatekeepers. I think this leads to like a kind of like, I'll say like a rapey culture, but like maybe rape isn't the best word for it. And when you give people that impression, you get a lot of people that think that some behaviors are okay because they're not like rape, when they are kind of like rapey, or when we should have like another word, they're predatory, I should say.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
I think the use of like more extreme words can be agitative and beneficial for movement sometimes, but I think in this case specifically, it's actually removing some of the nuance because, like Destiny said, there's a lot of men who are going to do things like that are kind of pushy, but they're like, but it's not rape, and you're like, yeah, it's not rape, but it's also pushing boundaries, which is really inappropriate as well, right? And they're like, well, it's just not rape, and then we keep saying in rape culture, just tell men not to rape, and it's like this isn't helpful to literally any party involved. Like that's why I don't love the label rape culture myself, because I think it actually like reduces the quality of conversations that can be had, which I think is actually leading to more victimization, not less.
And
I think you need to consider like the contextualization, or you have to contextualize it properly. Like Destiny was saying about the inception of the Me Too movement and whatnot. We're talking about like, Hollywood producers. We're talking about really high up guys that, had wealth or had class or had prestige that were able to escape the system. And I think because there was not a great transition of that into like more of a public sphere where it's like people at your high school, I think there is a lot of people who, get pushy. And that's not to defend that, but it is to say that they're not like serial rapists. But I think that the movement has had trouble distinguishing the calibers of dealing with, problematic behavior. And if you can't do that, then I don't think you'll be able to address the issue. And that's why I think like that Me Too movement that's spread into society now is the biggest enemy of women speaking up about issues, because then there's going to be that reactionary counter push of like, well, it's like none of the accusations are true and, everybody's lying and they'll just say that anyway.
No, that's just misogyny. That's ridiculous. That's misogyny. Anyway, I posted a study that proved my fucking point in the Discord, and you all should probably read it, on how people do still disbelieve and blame women for their own rape, despite the Me Too era.
It's whether or not it's gotten better. That we all agree that it's gotten better, right? Or do you not agree with that?
Well,
no, I don't. I think I don't agree with that. I don't see how it's gotten better. Women are still accused of false rape accusations.
What do we say about like the powerful figures that have been held accountable now that hadn't in the past, right? Whereas in the past, somebody like Roman Polanski or whatever would be getting like applauses from people in Hollywood, but now we see major producers and actors and like A-list actors getting called out. How can we say the culture hasn't changed?
Because one guy went to prison.
Not just one guy. There have been several actors that have gotten
Anna,
like women are still accused of false rape accusations.
we
They're still
agree with
accused of
that.
lying.
We agree with
Can
that.
I clear something up really quickly, please?
Said,
I just want to clear up really quickly. First, Roman Polanski didn't get put in prison. It's just that his at this point he's been banned from the Oscars for the last.
I never said. I never said. No, wait. I never said he got put in prison. I'm just saying that like a while ago, it felt like there were a lot of people in Hollywood that would still cover for him or support him. Whereas if we look to today, like the culture and people like Spacey or Weinstein or like other actors that have been called out, now that doesn't seem to be the case as today. That there's as much cover provided for these people as there used to be.
That was what I was going to describe really quickly. Is that specifically after they had been accused, like Roman Polanski literally admitted to the 13-year-old relationship with the 13-year-old, and then he continued to work with the Oscars. They were literally Skyping him in when he won in like 2001 and so on and so forth.
It was fucked,
but then recently in 2017, they finally banned him from it. They did the same thing with Harvey Weinstein. They did the same thing, I think, with Woody Allen and so on and so forth. So now there has been a cultural shift in that they are now like taking stances to make sure that they actually ban people who are like convicted of sexual assault and things like that.
I think what we need to acknowledge is that there's like a lot of people who don't believe them in. And like maybe even the predominant narrative is that like you shouldn't believe them, and that you should be like very skeptical about rape accusations. Like I can acknowledge that like a lot of rape accusations, aren't treated, with the respect that they should be. But I think that we, on the same turn, we also have to acknowledge that there is a culture of people who also just believe in believing all women automatically. And that's not the appropriate solution. At least I don't think it is the appropriate solution.
I think that's just a fringe minority of feminists, though.
I don't think so. No, because I mean, and you can look at just like Twitter, right? Or like there's so many instances of this where there will be someone who is like accused of something, whether it be like Aziz Ansari or Dream, the Minecraft YouTuber, who is like accused of like bad interactions with people. And then you dig into the story and it's like a complete nothing burger. But then there are people who like don't take them seriously, and are not able or not willing to talk to them at all from that point going forward. And that's problematic, that we exist in like this culture that is hungry constantly for drama and for accusing people of things. And
I agree.
It eats people up. And then
But I think
no
that's
good comes of
cancel.
it.
I think that's cancel culture, though, isn't it? And I think that like there's a difference between like cancel culture and then the fact that most rapes are still not going prosecuted in the criminal justice system, because I care most about the criminal justice
Yeah.
system
Wait,
and getting more prosecution.
And I think we should like.
What do you think is if I can just like get the framing, what do you think is like the tangible difference between cancel culture and like the Me Too movement or like the anti-rape culture movement?
I mean, isn't the difference that like they were actually complaining about, a real issue with like systemic injustice with
I think people could make the case that they do that when they're trying to cancel certain people.
April?
I mean, I think we need to distinguish between like the vast majority of sexual assault and rape, which isn't something that's called out like publicly, that you don't have massive Twitter threads on. That's the majority of rape and sexual assault. And so if you're interested in like really changing the majority of rape and sexual assault, we can talk about the Me Too movement and cancel culture and these big figures. And I feel like that's kind of a different scenario than like the majority of rape and sexual assault. So maybe, if I can give Anna like a slight bit of credit here, even if it's true that like you have these like cancel culture events where people are like held accountable, or where people are falsely accused, that is still representing like a tiny minority of the amount of times people are either being falsely accused or being legitimately sexually assaulted. So these are kind of two separate issues here.
Well, false accusations of sexual assault and rape are very rare. So, yeah.
I guess I would
Also,
ask
real
Anna,
quick,
do
hold on.
you-
Just I just want to real quick. So you cited this study. This study doesn't say anything about how like it's like a study on rape culture or not. This is just a study showing like what effects you can report on or what things you report on that will influence the
Yes.
reporting or adjudication of a rape case. This doesn't
Right,
this doesn't say
exactly.
anything about whether
That's
anything
rape
has gotten
culture.
worse. No.
Wait,
This
what
doesn't say
were-
about
It's
whether
a current study.
No,
It's
hold
from-
on. This,
Anna, what
this-
were
I'm
we
just
supposed to
explaining.
get from the study?
Yeah, I'm just saying that all this
Supposed
study
to
says
see that what I'm saying is right.
Well, like
that
what
I-
part
all
of
this,
what part
all
of
this
what you're
is saying is that if you report on certain things, like the incident location, the sexual history of somebody, or relationship with somebody,
Right.
that you're less likely to get good adjudication. But if you report on other things, like relating to the socioeconomic status of the perpetrator,
Right.
or things like this, that these don't have. This isn't saying whether or not rape culture has gotten better or worse, or even to what extent it exists.
It's
This is
showing
just
that rape
how
culture
people-
is still fully
No,
active.
this is just showing. This is just
Yes, it
showing how
is.
people adjudicate cases. That's what this study is about. Just as a heads up. Okay.
Yeah, that's rape culture.
Would you say that we have a crime culture if there are people that are less likely to acquit or not acquit based on like the
No,
characteristics
because
of
this
how
is
something
based on misogyny. It's just
No, this isn't based on misogyny.
Yes,
No,
it
hold on, wait,
is.
hold on. Your own study contradicts that because in this very study it says that male cases were less likely to be believed than female cases. So that report that implies misandry more than anything else.
I mean, we do know that that is a problem, though.
It might be, but you don't have data to show that. Your study showed me that there's a less incidence of believing male rape victims, and this is just showing the difference between how people adjudicate cases based on what's reported.
Right. It's just like why we have rape shield laws where criminal justice attorneys are not allowed to invoke the fact that, a victim has been like sexually promiscuous or something because, the rape case is never going to get prosecuted then. You're screwed. Like there's
Yeah,
no
that's
way a
good.
rape
So that
victim
shows
is
that
going to get
that
justice.
shows that that's a good thing. That shows that we're taking into account studies like this by not reporting on those things because that will affect the adjudication of those cases.
Anna, do you
Right.
know when that policy was enacted? Like when did the policy go into place that you couldn't talk about like a woman's promiscuity in the case of like a sexual assault? Do you know when that policy was made?
I think that was in the 90s.
Okay, so
I
you
mean,
could
it
argue
doesn't
that at
matter
least in the
because
last 30 years,
criminal
like it's gotten better because of that policy alone. And I would agree, there's a
doesn't
huge
matter.
problem. Like you and I would probably fully agree, there are absolutely problems in the processing and persecution of rape. Not
Cops
all
are
of
really
them.
bad about it. Yeah.
Yeah, there's some huge problems. And the problem is that not all of them are actually like things that humans can control. For example, like things like
Yeah.
rape kits and stuff like that. Lots of
Yeah,
them
there's
don't get processed. So we could fix that. But there's a lot of cases where in rape, a woman might not come forward until 4 to 5 days later. So there's no evidence to be collected. And then you have just a really weak case to try. And it's really hard to push anything because it comes down to a lot of time he said, she said, which are really, really difficult cases. And this isn't to be like blaming the victim. It means that like there are instances where like the judicial system is failing victims and failing overall the system that are wholly benign and just inherent to the nature of the forensic evidence that we can utilize right now. Like if somebody doesn't leave evidence, it's really, really hard to prove rape cases without like video evidence or like multiple witnesses. Like it's really, really hard to try these things and have them actually go to a guilty verdict, which is super sad. But that doesn't mean that there's like this sinister system at play. It means that like
no, I'm not saying there is, but there's still underlying misogyny because people are still assuming that false rape allegations are that prominent.
And
there's still
assumption
things
is
that we can do to fix the criminal justice system, and plenty of scholars have plenty of suggestions on this. I've read so many studies on this and what they're doing.
What's one thing that could improve that?
Making rape myth acceptance less.
No, hold on. In a court of law, you have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that a crime was committed. What's one thing that could alleviate that? If somebody doesn't turn in a rape kit,
you could have someone like what I want to be an expert witness appeal and explain to the jury on trauma reactions and typical
that's
of rape
not good
victims.
enough. That's not beyond a reasonable doubt that a crime has occurred.
It doesn't matter. That still helps the jury.
It doesn't help at all. All you'd have to do is bring in one expert witness that shows that trauma reactions can develop from things that aren't even traumatic, or that traumatic people are less likely to recall events accurately.
Or you could develop traumas based on no experience at all, but you can
exactly. That's like some of the least
prove.
reliable evidence.
Well, that's not true because that only happens with therapists and not with like random people.
It couldn't happen with a team of lawyers or with parents that are trying. Of course it could, right? This could develop. It doesn't only happen with therapists. Tons of people can instill bad memories or false thoughts or whatever.
Most of the studies were done by just random research psychologists, not even counseling. Most of the studies of false memories has actually been done by like forensic units, more like forensic psychologists and then just research psychologists. And as you would know, a research psychologist isn't a therapist, and they're not usually trained in therapy at all. They're usually trained in statistics and all the boring shit, right?
You're using it out of context, though. It bears no context to this, and it's being used in bad.
Well, you're trying to say that only therapists can create false memories of a trauma, but we're saying, well, that's not necessarily true at all. Like, if anyone just has the process figured out, anyone could create a false memory if they just replicate what the therapists sometimes do, right? So the idea of like we could get an expert witness to defend the victim, you can get an expert witness to dismiss the victim. That's why an expert witness won't actually solve the problem of persecuting sexual assault better.
So let me ask you guys a question.
Why do they use expert witnesses then?
Expert witnesses are used to build on top of other types of circumstantial evidence.
You can't just claim that anyone can create a false memory. That's not true.
That is true.
Okay. Well,
no, it's not true. Where is the data that supports this? You can't just make claims out of your ass.
So then here's another question.
If you don't have a degree,
and I think this is actually related to the
false
conversation at hand. Do you guys believe that it's possible? Do you guys believe, given the things that you guys are talking about, describing the fact that sexual assault is like less likely to have forensic evidence and things like that? Do you think that there should be some sort of different burden of proof regarding sexual assault cases than?
Yes.
Of course not.
Why not?
Our justice system is constructed around the concept of innocent until proven guilty. You can't suspend that just for some types of cases. That's ridiculous. It would completely break.
There's
I think
plenty
that's the part we've been moving to. That's like kind of the tough part of this conversation is that, there's a lot that we do, and there's also a lot that we simply can't do something about. If somebody does not get like a rape kit, and if there's not a lot of evidence, the uncomfortable truth of the matter is that it's really tough to do something about this. And I think because it's tough to do something about it without a rape kit or something else, I'd see the response, or rather the response I have seen is that people will then go to, trying to take this to like a school, or they'll make it like a social push. And there, the validity of certain accusations is even less convincing to people. And I think in that circumstance, that's when you get most of the like, oh, it's a false accusation, like I'm not going to take it seriously, that kind of culture.
And it should be hard, as much as it sucks. Like, it should be hard to get a rape or like a murder or an assault conviction on somebody. Like, these are really big charges from the state, and you want them to have like a high burden of proof to convict somebody of it. That's how our legal system is designed.
Starter.
These are very heavy accusations that taint somebody's life for a very long time, if not for the entirety of their life afterwards. And as much as I empathize with the victims of assault and rape and all of these things, the best thing that I think we can do is educate people to know what to do after they've encountered or had an experience like this, right? Like getting a rape kit done, not taking a shower after something's happened to you, right? Rather than changing the amount of evidence that we require for somebody to be considered guilty.
Anna, you disagreed with that. You think we should change the burden of proof?
Well, I think we could change the criminal justice system, and plenty of researchers have been talking about doing this. Plenty of
Wait, change it how?
I mean, like with the rape shield laws, things like that don't
that's
allow
the thing
criminal
that's already
justice
done,
attorneys
which
to
is
do
good.
that. No, there's still plenty of problems because criminal justice attorneys, and I saw this when I worked with rape victims, they can still like, insinuate that a victim was maybe a slut or something, or like, they worked as a sex
My
worker.
understanding is, looking at how court cases have gone in the United States, I don't know the legal terms for this. If a lawyer wants to chime in or whatever in my chat or something, my understanding is that you can't bring prior character evidence to a court to get a conviction on somebody of something like that. Like, this is what they
You
try
could
to do,
still
for
let
instance,
it
in the
slip.
you can't let it. You'll get called out for a mistrial. Like, if you do that as a prosecutor, you could get fucked and lose the whole case. My understanding is if you try to bring forth, it literally has happened in court cases before. I don't know why you're saying it doesn't. Like,
Okay, because it doesn't.
Oh well.
Do you have any evidence for this
retract my
claim?
entire claim.
Because
Didn't-
courts are
now we can ask
really
happened during
prudent.
the this
Hold
happened
on.
during the
Now you
Rittenhouse.
If
Hold on,
you're
hold on.
asking for
Wait.
evidence from everybody else, I think it's fair that people can ask you for an evidence.
Well,
This
then
is-
where's the evidence from everyone else, Star?
Okay, so this isn't
Okay.
this isn't an evidentiary based claim. It was more of an intuitive claim. No,
No, this isn't
No,
intuitive.
I
It's
was
the process.
correcting it. I was correcting it.
Okay, love
Not
you.
intuitive. It's actually something that like we've actually seen. But it's okay. If Anna's not willing to accept that, then just move on past the evidence part.
Well, but it's important because typically you're not allowed to do like character assassination things in a courtroom if it's not directly
but-
relevant to the case.
But they can still insinuate a victim was like a slut or something, and like a jury will still get that.
Then
like,
the job
they will
is on the
still hear that.
defense. Then the job is on the defense to call that out.
Which they would, because that would
Yeah.
potentially
You could
give
get
them
a
a
mistrial.
mistrial, which would
Yeah.
be great for them. So like courts
I mean,
are really, really, really
it
well
happened with the
controlled.
Brock Turner
If you're
case.
going into this field though, Anna, you know that court systems are really well controlled and they're very tight about what is permissible or not because you have a defense and a prosecutor. And so if you do something that violates like trial rules, they'll just call a mistrial because that's what the defense job is. So like I don't know.
What I'm saying, I mean,
Okay.
this happened in literally the Brock Turner case, Erudite. So what the fuck about that? Stop acting like I'm dumb or something. I don't know what I'm talking about.
Anna, you're getting a little antsy again. Do you
Well,
need some
like-
time? I don't care why.
I mean, people are trying to discredit me, and here I am,
People
like
are
I'm
disagreeing with you. And it's
No,
okay.
they're trying to discredit me.
Not discrediting, it's just disagreeing.
It doesn't matter. Whatever they're doing, we're
Wait,
going to
hold
do
on.
it
Just
civilly
I want to
and
be
Okay,
clear.
respectfully.
well, what about
I
the
just want to be
Brock
clear real
Turner
quick.
case
When we say the Brock Turner case, right? Are you talking about the character of an accuser or the character of a defendant?
The victim, not the
The victim.
accuser. The victim Bill of Rights means that you call them victims in the court system.
I think that depends sometimes, but
No, it
maybe
doesn't depend.
It absolutely depends because
No, it doesn't.
Okay, so for some, at least in looking over the Rittenhouse stuff, there are some judges that won't let you call certain people victims because that charges the jury to hear people as like,
It
okay, well,
violates
they're
the
the victim.
victim's bill of rights. That
Okay,
judge
I don't know
was
what the
violating the victim's bill of rights.
Okay, okay. Brock Turner was convicted, wasn't he? Wasn't he found guilty?
Yes, for like 6 months.
Okay.
So we can definitely talk about like length of persecution, but even in the case of Brock Turner, he was found guilty. So I'm not, I don't know.
But his attorney still was able to still insinuate that the victim was like, had like a drinking issue and stuff. And he still was able to, assassinate her character. That's what I'm saying. That still happens. These are still issues that need to be addressed in the criminal justice system.
What is the legal drinking? Is it 0.08?
I think it depends.
I think it depends on your state.
Yeah.
I think in my province it's 0.05.
Okay, hold on. I just want to
Utah's as well.
wait, hold on.
Wait.
I want to be really clear here, okay? Just because it's important, right? So for stuff that's evidentiary in a court of law, you can't bring up prior misconduct to try to assassinate somebody's current character unless it's incredibly relevant to what's being talked about. Like they made a statement about like, I'm going to kill, I'm going to rape, I'm going to do something. So I haven't looked at any of the specifics for the Brock Turner case, okay? But now when I'm reading this, Emily Doe, I'm assuming is one of the accusers, when she was tested at the hospital, her blood alcohol content was 0.12%. And it sounds like the doctors estimated at the time of the assault, it would have been 0.242 or 0.249%. So if this is the case, then it makes sense why alcohol was brought up because it seemed to be directly relevant to a factor relating to the rape.
It was a character assassination.
No, that's not.
No, it was in her defense.
That is absolutely not a character assassination.
No,
if I'm going to be accused of
that's not
something
what I'm
and the person
saying.
was highly drunk at the time it
Yeah.
happened, that's going to be relevant to the court case. Of
That
course.
probably helped in the guilty verdict. If you're that inebriated, how do you consent? You're probably blacked
exactly.
out.
But I'm saying that
Not
the
a character
attorney
assassination. That's a defense.
No, I'm not saying that's what the defense was. For fuck's sake.
Okay, Anna.
I'm saying that the defense attorney
Anna.
still did character assassinate her.
Okay, Anna.
Erudite, you're like really disappointing me, honestly.
Okay,
Like, I
Anna,
don't
you're
even
disappointing me a lot more. This is
Like, you're
literally
just-
this is literally the final warning I can give you. I need you to be civil. If this is too charged for you, because I get it, being dogpiled can hurt and it can be whatever. If this is too charged for you, then maybe we need to remove you from the situation. This is the last warning I'm going to give you. Okay?
All right.
Please continue on with the conversation.
I don't quite remember where we were at.
I was trying to say that that's not the character assassination I was talking about, and you kept trying to strawman me, and I don't appreciate that.
Which character
Don't do it
assassination
anymore.
were you talking about?
Where the defense attorney insinuated that she had a drinking problem, not that she was very drunk. It's the fact that he insinuated she had a drinking problem.
Well,
So don't strawman me anymore.
That probably wasn't admissed. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if there was like a follow-up, but that was probably not deemed super relevant, especially if the thing at the end of if the argument being made by the defense is like, yeah, she her intoxication level is way above being able to give consent, and that aids in like the correct verdict. I mean, I don't know. I think that comes down to the lawyer.
A character assassination.
Well, but character assassinations can happen in any courtroom ever. I mean, we shouldn't be surprised that it occurs as well
No,
in
there's no
rape
justification.
cases.
No, there's
Hey,
no
can we-
justification for it.
Anna,
It's
can you
not
tell us
okay.
what is the character assassination that you're referring to?
The defense attorney insinuated that the victim maybe had a drinking problem, and that's why she shouldn't be credible. And this happens all the time in rape cases, which is part of rape culture.
I think it happens in like
There's
a
plenty
lot
of
of
empirical
cases.
data on this.
When I
But
think
it's
of rape-
worse in a rape case.
I mean, is that
When I think of
is it not
when I-
relevant? Like,
Wait, hold on. Start us first, because she was going in April.
Well, I think April should go first because I'm probably going to bring up something.
Okay, then April,
yeah,
go ahead.
adjacent.
I mean, you do need to establish credibility if someone's making an accusation. If there's reason to believe that someone's like not a credible accuser, if they have ulterior motives or are like unable to actually make the accusation, if someone like physically was not able to witness something occurring or, you know, perceive the sexual assault, and then they're like told later by their friends. And I'm not saying this is what happens in this circumstance because, you know, it was like an actual conviction in this case. But we can imagine that someone is just like told, yeah, you were assaulted, or they're convinced that they're assaulted after the fact. That's a really big problem. And you do need to establish in court that someone's actually able to make the accusation, on good conscience, credibly. So, to an extent, like character assassination is bad, but like you do need to establish that someone's a credible accuser in the first place.
Also, I don't think the
So,
Victim's Bill of Rights says you have to be referred to as a victim in court. I don't know where that comes from.
so
Reading that.
when I think of rape culture, I don't think of my what I would say is the most like, or one of the more harmful parts of rape culture would be like immediately when after an assault or something like that. It's not about like when they go to court, right? It's when somebody goes to authorities or something like that, right? When somebody goes to somebody they trust and tells them what happened, and everything around that is scrutinized. That's when I think is like the most like harmful part of rape culture. That's what I would say. I don't know where I was going with this. I'm sorry. I'll be quiet now.
Well, I mean, at least you tried. So listen, I guess I feel like we're kind of nearing the end of the conversation. I don't really feel like I don't know. I don't really think there's very much more to like milk out of the conversation. Is there anything else that anybody feels like is kind of poignant that they feel like needs to be stated?
Something that was said earlier that I think is really important is one of the reasons why it's so important to turn the temperature down on the way that we talk about this shit instead of every action being rape is that it's really hard for some people to come to terms with past negative actions they've done if they feel like they have to frame it through the most hyperbolic fucking words ever. Like with the current definitions and the current way that we approach rape, almost every single like encounter between two teenagers is probably involving some level of rape because teenagers are dumb, because it happens, because people aren't thinking. But to call it all rape makes it impossible for somebody to ever view a prior action through some sort of like introspective lens because they're worried that by entertaining the thought, they have to like brand themselves a rapist, which is another reason why I think it's good to like turn the language down on some of these things we talk about.
Yeah, this is
Yeah, I'll,
exactly correct. And that's what I brought up initially. Like, I think we need to acknowledge that we have like a problem with casual sex and the casual sex culture. And recenter the language. So we're really identifying like what's the problem here, and why people are getting in these circumstances in the first place.
Well, it's not just that. Like throughout like the last like 50 years, I think most of the people who have had sex by today's standards would either be considered, not going into it, exercising, proper descriptions of consent, or they are just like straight up rapists because they didn't ask for consent. And I think that's kind of like the terminally online thing that's infected this discourse is like, the way people describe consent now is not the way that people ever described it. And that doesn't mean that every person who had sex was a rapist. It means that, right now, because of like the heat of this conversation, we have to think differently about consent. And I would argue that that's not normal. I wouldn't make a claim as to whether it's better or not, because I don't know if there's like a significant uptick or downtick in the amount of rape cases, but it's just simply not how relationships have been had. Like if you told your grandpa that, before you kissed your girlfriend on like your second date, you asked her if you could kiss her, he'd be like, what are you, like stupid? And he'd like smack you or something. So I think that this discourse has certainly changed the way we look about consent, but I haven't seen whether that's like a clear all the way good thing or not. I think it's just now making people way more conscious about every action. Like Destiny said, now it's hyperbolic too. Like nobody wants to admit to being a rapist and nobody wants to admit to themselves that they were raped. Sometimes people do want to admit that and then they come off, too quick in admitting that because they've got a different, frame of reference after their interactions with somebody are like put through the lens of them being like an abuser or something. But those are my 2 cents.
Yeah,
I mean,
I was just gonna say, like, I don't know if I'd be willing to say like it's a casual sex culture problem. I would say like we've kind of jumped from like one puritanical view of sex to almost it seems like another, but there's still like not actually a lot of nuance about conversation. Like I think whether you want to have like traditional sexual roles or casual sexual roles, I think is actually pretty neutral. The problem is that like our social landscape hasn't actually evolved to deal with this, right? We don't really have like actual meaningful conversations about consent or about like implied consent and misunderstood consent or or consent when you are inebriated, like all sorts of things that lead to like really dicey situations. And so like, is it a casual sex problem? I would say it's more of like a lack of social conversation, which is why like these like really hyperbolic of like, yeah, but rape is bad and like we need to just believe victims is like super, super damaging to the conversation because we just can't get anywhere. And it doesn't actually solve the problem. It just leads to like circling around kind of the same talking points without any actual like measurable solutions of like, okay, well, like what is good sex education? Like what does consent actually look like? Like what are the cues that you're explicitly looking for? How do you convey your consent well? Like all sorts of things. There's just like, there's no space for the conversation because we just want to say like rape is bad and like we should like care about victims. And it's like both of those things are obviously true, but can we go beyond that?
Okay, then I have another question. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Anna. Go ahead.
I wanted to say that empirical data also shows that most victims of rape don't recognize also that they've been raped because even though what happened to them meets the legal definition of rape. So that's another problem that we have with rape culture, is that so many people don't think what happened to them is rape. They're too scared to label it as rape. So that's a really big issue too. Also, another issue is that rape kits don't really do much because most rapes that occur are date rapes. So rape kits don't always necessarily do all that much, since again, it's like a lot of times it's like your date, it's an acquaintance, a friend, or whatever, and the argument will just be, well, it was consensual. So
Well, the rape kit is still essential, though, right?
yeah.
So we shouldn't say rape kits don't do much. A rape kit is literally a necessary precondition to a rape accusation. So
Yeah.
I think rape kits do. It's
it's
not
just that
sufficient, but it's necessary. But I mean, like that should probably be the case, right? If it's a he said, she said, should that really be enough to make a conviction off of?
Yeah.
Well, there's probably legitimate issues of both victims don't realize that they're being raped. I imagine there are perpetrators who don't realize that they have sexually or raped somebody either, right? Like there's
a huge thing also.
So like
common, yeah.
there's a lot of stuff, which is why when somebody maybe gets accused of rape and they literally don't think they happened, we get into really messy territory where somebody literally thought that they had consent and the other person literally thinks that they didn't give it.
Yes.
And now you're in this weird situation to be like, whoa, now what the fuck? How do we handle this? And I actually don't think the social landscape is dealing with that well.
Yeah, there's also research that shows that when men are drunk, they're more likely to interpret women's like just neutral to flirty actions as consent to sex, which is kind of scary and could also explain a lot of things too.
I think we can acknowledge also that in a lot of rapes, a lot of people who are on the receiving end don't say anything, don't give verbal communication. That's not their fault, but but also there are the person who is on the giving end is also not verbally communicating. So there's I could very well see plenty of space there for there to be misinterpretation.
Yeah, it's called tonic immobility. It's like 70% of rape victims experience tonic immobility, which means they freeze up. So they don't fight back, they don't say no. It's called tonic immobility, and it significantly predicts post-traumatic stress disorder and severe depression.
It is really hard to like prevent a rape when you're in the moment.
Yeah.
I think that like, unfortunately, a lot of the language also, I think, strips women of like agency. There's a lot that women can do. And like, I had a panel discussion a while back with all women. And one of the things that one of the women on the panel said was that like, she has a lot of sex and a lot of relationships with people. And she believes that it's just like, it's part and parcel that she's accepting that if she has a lot of sex with people, she's going to be sexually assaulted. Which I think that's pretty scary. And a lot of people on the panel ended up agreeing with that and saying that like, yeah, like I also engage in frequent casual sex. And I've just accepted that like, you know, when I do that, I'm going to be in positions where I'm compromised and sexually assaulted. That's scary, frankly. But I think that like when we talk about rape culture, we also need to like accept that there's a lot women can do to like make sure they're putting themselves in positions where they're not going to be, you know, at risk for being sexually assaulted.
This is one thing where I deviate from probably every single one of you on, well, one of the many places, but within this conversation, I think one of the biggest things we can do to improve like the arguments or like the idea of whether rape culture exists or not is kind of gatekeep when sexual intimacy occurs and make that something that's socially normal. Like, obviously, I'm a Christian. I'm not having sex till I'm married. And not only do I think that's, a great thing because then it makes, a romantic occasion more special. It makes it something unique to the partner and something that's kind of bound by marriage. But it also makes it so that, I'm getting a character established. Like I've had accusations thrown up against me before, but because people know that like I'm a very celibate individual, like I don't go off, kissing strangers in parking lots because they understand my character. They're less prone to believe the accusations against me. And that's something that I think men need to do better at. A lot of men are surprised that people believe accusations against them, but they live lives that are only conducive to those accusations being true. So that's basically what I would say. I think if people didn't have sex till they were married, this problem would largely go away. Of course, rapists will still exist,
It would
but I
be
think
different,
there's
for
so
sure.
much less of a middle ground, right?
Yeah, no, I agree absolutely. I think that like a lot of the ways that you approach sex can put you in more danger for being sexually assaulted. And frankly, like a lot of people are not responsible enough to like engage in sex in a casual way that's not putting them, at risk. There's people who are able to do that and are able to engage in casual sex safely. But I think for a lot of people, it's really dangerous because they're not able to speak up for themselves or set boundaries. And so like the reason why we have certain cultural rules about engaging in sex and the reason we put up these boundaries is because I think we know or have known for generations that like it is incredibly dangerous unless it's highly controlled. And there is a lot of like marital rape as well. So I think that like on the other end of that, there's a lot of danger in like traditional, modes of approaching sex as well. But it's a different kind of danger. And it's a danger that, a lot of times we know more about and can address in different ways.
I'd actually wonder if we know less about intimate partner violence. Like we know a lot about like demographics and statistics, but it feels like we actually know very little about what to do about it, right? Like when it comes to casual sexual encounters and being like assaulted by an acquaintance that maybe you just met like a couple of hours ago, those are actually the lower stats. And it seems like it's actually, Anna, this is probably something you and I can agree on. There are certain things that we can like advise women to keep themselves safe and certain things that we'd recommend if we also know that they maybe have a trauma history, but they're also interested in engaging in sex, right? And so like we actually have education about that, but most of the sexual assault is coming dominantly from intimate partner relationships, right? And I don't really know what we do about this, right? Like, sure, we can educate people about tonic immobility and like the freeze response during sex and stuff like that, but that seems to probably be more beneficial when you're having more casual relationships with people that you don't know, right? I imagine in most cases, I'd hope at least that if tonic immobility is happening in an intimate partner situation, that these two are speaking about it. And so like we can maybe do education of like, if that's happening, how do you talk to your partner about it? But I don't know. I actually feel like as a culture, we really don't know how to deal with intimate partner violence. And like, I would say when Evan was saying like, there's people who don't know that they've been raped, I'd say most of the cases when I've come across that, it's been people who have been in a sexual assault situation with an intimate partner. And they have a hard time labeling it as like sexual violence because they also have like a strong emotional connection and a warm regard for this person, right? And so it leaves them with a lot of cognitive dissonance. And they're kind of like, how do I make these two things make sense?
I don't think the issue is unique to
Well,
intimate partner violence. I think we just have a really bad understanding of like relationships and boundaries in general. Like anecdotally, when I read like posts where people talk about like, like I don't know what to do about my boyfriend, like he doesn't wipe his ass, and I don't really like sleeping with him when I read post after post, or someone will be like, I'm not really sure what to say about my husband. He said that my whole family was full of retarded people and says I'm not allowed to have friends anymore. What do I do? Like I see so many people that there are clear issues going on in this relationship, independent of any sexual assault or whatever, where people just have a bad understanding of like either they've had bad modeling in their life for what a healthy relationship is, or they don't have the tools or the confidence to stand up to their partner, or they just don't know what they themselves deserve. Maybe it's a self-esteem thing. I'm not sure. But I think that in general, we have really big problems navigating relationships or establishing healthy relationships for ourselves collectively. Well, not ourselves, for most people, because I'm good at it. So fuck everybody.
I'm gonna make my audience angry for a minute
Don't even start.
by counter signaling the incel question again. I think this is something that people often downplay the importance of. Like, there is a language to being in relationships, and there's a language that women speak that you need to understand. And a level of interaction with relationships and women is necessary to be fluent in this and to ultimately have a marriage, in my opinion. And people are going to think that's controversial, but I think it goes without saying. You guys probably don't think it's controversial, but my audience is tearing me apart for it right now.
So let me ask you guys a quick question. I know rape culture and all that like has to do with like punishing of sexual assault, but what about now that we've had like the Me Too movement and the fact that like accusations are like a lot more forthcoming, like people are more just willing to do that. What are your thoughts on increasing punishments for false rape accusations?
I think that the punishment for a false accusation should be whatever the punishment is. You have to be wary that if you're like the threshold for what a false accusation is needs to be pretty high. It can't just be like an accusation that didn't win in court, because then you have like a very weird chilling effect on all sorts of accusations. Actually, I don't know if there should be a penalty, like a false accusation penalty. It should just be like whatever lying under oath is, right? Like perjuring yourself, which I think is already illegal.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's similar like cases of malingering, for example, where like somebody fakes a brain injury and stuff. Like the level at which we're willing to label something malingering is really, really, really high, and we want it to be beyond a shadow of a doubt. Because especially with the sexual assault, we have this weird thing where somebody might feel sexually assaulted, and the person who they feel perpetrated against them literally was confident that they got consent, right? And so in that case, the court might fall apart and not convict the individual, but the victim shouldn't be now tried as making a false allegation because they might have literally felt assaulted in that situation. And so like I think like there are, like I've said, I've worked with individuals who have fully come out. Usually in those cases, to be honest, how it's played out is the court thanks them, and they go through the steps of basically like amending the statement and releasing the individual, which is like potentially less than maybe should happen. And I would like to believe in this case the court had grace because they were in active addiction when like the claim was made and stuff like that. But I don't know. I think persecuting it is like we'd have to be really, really, really careful.
Well, sure. Like, wouldn't the idea of like persecuting it would need to be a known intentional false accusation? It wouldn't just be
Yeah,
something
there
like
would need to be a really high threshold. But even so, like it should just be the same as any other false accusation you make. Because to make a false accusation, I think you necessarily perjure yourself, right? That's what a false accusation is. You submit a statement to the court that's a lie, that's knowingly a lie. So I don't know why there would need to be a special perjury for rape versus anything else.
Well, there's
What if
also like
someone
libel
feels
and
like they
slander
were-
laws.
Well, what if they feel like they were assaulted? Like that's the big issue, isn't it? Like they might genuinely feel like, then that's not a lie.
And a malingerer might
Right.
say that they genuinely feel. So, like in these cases of perjury, you'd have to have beyond burden of proof of saying, even if you say that you felt this way, you're only saying this to defend your false allegation, right? Like you would need beyond a shadow of a proof to ensure that they knew what they were doing.
Yeah, you have to
Right.
know that it's
Yeah,
false.
yeah, because there's
And,
a
like,
like a
difference.
confession, something like that. Yeah.
Right, yeah, because there's a difference between someone who genuinely believes it and someone who is lying.
And when it comes to like public figures, there's like an added layer as well. Well, when it comes to like slander laws, where you have to actually prove like malicious intent, that you're like actually trying to hurt someone, as well as like knowing that it's false and spreading it to a public platform. So yeah, I mean, I do agree that like the standard should be pretty high for like proving that it's a false accusation.
Do you think our slander laws are high? Do you think like the in order to like prove like slander or libel in court, like the barrier is already really high, right? Like
And
it
it's
has to
higher
be
for like
proven.
public figures.
Only for public figures is it really high.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, are there like a lot of cases of like slander happening against like non-public figures?
Isn't slander and defamation, isn't that civil shit? So you can just sue whoever the fuck you want.
Civil,
for that.
yeah, it's civil. It's not a crime. It's
Right.
civil court.
It's a civil crime. But anyway, how do you So you're saying that like
You just sue someone.
no, I'm saying are you saying that it's commonly happening and there's commonly lawsuits over slander and things like that? It's commonly enforced
Probably
against
thousands of
non-public
them. Yeah,
figures?
every year. You probably just
Yeah.
look them
Okay.
up. Yeah.
I guess
I
I'd
mean-
probably have to look that up. Yeah. So listen, it's been a great
Yeah.
conversation, you guys. I sincerely appreciate you guys all for being part of it. This is the Fanatic panel. The entire purpose here is to have a conversation. Some people are too petulant to be able to do that. That was a passive aggressive dig. Yeah, I did that. But then sometimes you can
Wait,
actually
was
have
it at Chud or
conversations.
Mr. Girl? Which one? Or Lauren
Uh,
Southern?
actually, it was somebody here. But anyway, my point being,
Yes,
this was a great conversation, and I appreciate you guys for being part of it and at least like trying to be civil. I do think that these conversations are like they are kind of hard, and finding people who very firmly believe in rape culture and like that was a very difficult task, and I was asking around for it, and it was really, really, really difficult. But what I did find is that most people here in this conversation did more or less agree to some degree that like there is pushback against people who come forward with rape accusations. But I think we all can recognize with the advent of the Me Too movement and like the seeming like broader media representation for like sex crimes, there does seem to be a shifting in attitude that's happening. And some people feel like it's not happening fast enough, but at the end of the day, it is something that is occurring. And thank you guys all for being here. You can always follow me at twitch.tv/Mr. Fanatic, where we'll be having a walk-on panel and kind of continuing this discussion on rape culture and so on and so forth. Everyone, we'll start with Anna. Please go ahead and shout yourself out.
Oh yeah, you can find me on twitch.tv/Anavoir.
Alrighty, thank you. Kai Clips.
Yeah, you can find me on cozy.tv/Kai Clips. I think Destiny's about to pass me in followers, so you guys better go follow quick right now. And then on YouTube, just Kai Clips.
Thank you. April.
Yeah, follow me Taftaj, TAFTAJ, on Twitter and Twitch, where I usually stream, or on YouTube if you want to see me talk to notoriously banned, dangerous members like Destiny or Haas or whoever. But yeah, follow me on Twitter if you want to see sexy pictures and occasional political discourse.
Destiny.
Yeah, I'm a staunch anti-rape advocate, Destiny. You can find me at youtube.com/Destiny.
Nasa Erudite.
Yeah, my name's Natsu Erudite. You can find me pretty much on most platforms except for Cozy TV by those names. Yeah.
All right, Stardust.
I'm really disappointed that there were no pro-rape advocates on this panel. I feel like we've really missed out on hearing a perspective. I'm just kidding. I'm Stardust. You can find me on Twitch or on YouTube, Stardust Streams.
Thank you. I'm Fanatic. I'm working my best on trying to like improve the hosting and improving the discourse and making sure that like people are actually able to engage in conversation. I try my best to carefully vet every single person that comes into the channel. Sometimes people can still get past the mark. That's another passive aggressive dig, but ultimately I'm trying my best, and we're going to try our best to improve, including next week. You can listen to my albums under the name Fanatic on every platform. And yeah, I think that's it. Thank you guys so much. And we'll see you guys over in Twitch. For those who want to be on the walk-on.
Oh, so I can't be on the walk-on panel, is what you're saying.
Destiny, I am so sorry, but unfortunately you cannot.
You and me are going to do a duo stream, Destiny. We're going to be talking about weightlifting, and it'll be fantastic over on Cozy.
Destiny, you never included the Cosby clip in the rest of the video from our individual conversation in that studio. I need to go ahead and just send that to you, and then maybe you can, or maybe we can go over that.
All right, I don't do any of that shit. All right, that's
okay. Yeah, well, I didn't actually upload it yet. That's why. But I'm gonna go ahead and upload that. I need to edit an intro, and I'm just terrible at editing. I'm taking my time, and I'm lazy. But yeah, that's that. Thank you guys sincerely. I'll invite most of you guys back for a future conversation if you guys were willing. And I'm out. Peace.
Have a good one. Thank you for inviting us.
Bye.
Thanks for having me.
Yep.
All right. That's shit talk for now. Oh, he's still here. Never mind.
Shit talk who? Fanatic?
Yeah, I'm just kidding.
He's doing better. He's trying harder.
Pro-rape here.
I thought you were going to take on that mantle. Come on, Stardust. No?
You seem like the only person that would start us.
It's true. Big boy pants.
Well, there are public and private stances, right? So, yeah.
When did you go into Cozy TV? Destiny.
Oh, I had the account made a few days ago because I might go there to farm debates with conservative people.
Yeah.
It's been good
Maybe I'll fucking
content so
stream over there.
far.
You know, I don't know. I'm trying to think right now. Who do I want to get more money? Because I built up the left so much with the Son of Wash. Maybe I need to platform some good Nazis, get them some more representation, and get back to the good old days of fighting on the internet. It's a little uncomfortable that all the homophobia I see on the internet comes from left-leaning people. So
Yeah, like the what's his name, Alex, the politician guy.
yeah,
Like,
that's one
gay
word for him.
Democrat.
A lot of other choice words that are being used right now for him.
I know, it's wild.
If you
It's
were, I
crazy.
don't know if this is like your first time. Oh, you're a fucking Canadian.
Yeah,
aren't you?
and
I
a
keep
baby
forgetting it because you're like a
streamer.
normal human, but you're like Canadian. There was a Democratic candidate for the last election cycle. I don't know if you ever heard of Pete Buttigieg.
Yep, I did.
Yeah, but he had a lot of the same stuff.
Here's
where
the thing
people-
about Canadian politics, all right? We pay way more attention to American politics than Canadian for the most part.
does. Don't worry, we're used to it.
I mean, the reality is that, like, to some extent, like, especially for Canada, like the superpower below and the like politics that goes on does impact us inherently, and
Yeah.
it's more interesting.
Well, and it's also it's really interesting.
Yeah, because of our party system, it's a little bit more boring.
Well, I think it's just because Americans are fucking sociopathic when it comes to everything. So our political debates are literally like esports, blood sports, or not. I shouldn't say esports, but online Twitch blood sports. So.
Yeah.
How do you guys feel like that discussion went?
Pretty good. Got really deep on the issues.
today, Steve?
Sure.
So it was a little bit awkward at times. So
Yeah.
what'd you
Very
guys think?
awkward.
Yeah, I mean, not super productive, right?
I'm really
It's
excited
the
to go to the
conversation
gym
about it,
and sweat out my frustration. I'm really excited to do that.
Wow.
Yeah. How you get big Steve.
Nice.
Nice.
Awesome.
Fuck. I was gonna say something. Never mind. You guys make the conversation.
Your chat probably wants one of us to say Obama.
No,
right?
don't.
Obama.
Not memes or whatever.
Okay.
I
Oh.
was frustrated to see Anna. I felt that there was a lot of mischaracterization of data regularly, and I
Yeah.
think like I didn't want to like call on it too hard because I think like it can pull away from conversations to just like fixate on studies and stuff like that, because like you can only generalize studies so far, and a lot of the things that we were talking about, like we said, there aren't studies for it, right? So it's like
Yeah,
it's
because we're
difficult.
getting into super niche things. This is like an online debater bro thing that I've noticed. Your mileage may vary with this, but usually when I'm having a conversation with somebody, anytime somebody just says the research or the data, I'm usually immediately highly suspect of anything they claim. Because if you're going to talk about like the research that it usually will be referring to like one or two studies. Something that I think laymen don't realize all the time. I didn't realize this until I started actually dig through and read studies. Everybody thinks that if we talk about a particular issue, like a social issue, scientific issue, or whatever, people will always think that like, oh wow, like there must be like thousands of studies about this thing. But the reality is that for basically every single major issue, there's going to be like a few landmark studies. And when I say a few, I mean like two or
or
four.
three.
Yeah. And then like responses to those studies.
Yeah, I don't think people realize that because like I've written lit reviews for a long time, right? And like we get into really niche topics by like graduate level programs, and it's like they want 30 citations for a lit review, and I'm like, motherfucker, I can't. Like there aren't 30 papers on this topic. That's like it seems niche, but it's actually pretty broad. Like intimate partner violence with like specific demographic factors that you're wanting to like kind of control for. There really isn't going to be that many studies on it, and forensic psych has some of the most robust studies on anything. Get into like a social psych topic and you're fucked half the
The
time.
other problem is like there's a huge replication crisis and like so many studies. Like if you really, cherry pick studies, you can come to like radically different conclusions depending on the issue.
Well, I think even beyond like replication crisis, the problem is there's just not really that much literature out there. Like I always laugh when recently the hot topic has been like trans athletes, but like people will be in debates and be like, there's been a ton of research on puberty blockers
science
in
is
adolescent
settled.
kids. And it's like, no, there's like one longitudinal study right now, I think, tracking people over, I think, I think it's over 20 years. I think there's
And a lot of them are bad, like they're weak
Yeah.
methodologically because it takes a long time for like when it comes to trans athletes, like we have to kind of figure out a whole new way of controlling for different factors that we might just not think to control between men and women, right? And so it's like even the methodology itself is regularly improving. It's why there's no meta-analysis on this because there's enough studies, but there's no effect sizes that are comparable at this point. You just have to go with what the leading of the literature is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, it's frustrating. I wish people would realize that a little bit more, but
But the other thing is like,
sorry, what?
well, it's just no way to like actually approach real life to be like, what's the study for everything? Like no one actually approaches life this way. And I think it's like pretty disingenuous to like demand that someone has studies for every single thing they say. Because we don't have studies for everything we say. And when we go into like a conversation like this, a lot of it needs to be based on like a good faith ability to engage with what people are saying and to take them at their word when they talk about observations that they've experienced, and then meet them where they're at to talk about your observations and, dissect them in that kind of a realm.
Something that I don't like is it gets brought up a lot, and I'm going to be honest, I haven't read a lot of papers. I haven't read any papers on this yet, so I could just be wrong. But my mom used to say something to me a long time ago, which was anytime we were near the house, my mom would tell me, be really careful how you drive. Like 95% of car accidents happen within 5 miles from home. And I remember hearing this as a kid, and then at some point I got old enough and I was like, you know what, Mom, it's probably because 95% of people drive within 5 miles from home. Like I don't think that I don't think they're saying anything profound. I hear that stat brought up a lot, that the majority of like rape or sexual assault happens within relationships. I understand that is probably true, but I feel like that's probably because that's where the vast majority of sexual encounters happen. So it's a little bit annoying sometimes when I'll bring up the idea that I think that sometimes we give a lot of people freedoms, but we don't really give them the ability to explore them in a responsible way. And sexual liberation has been one of those things. And I'll say, like, we have to be careful that, like, we've empowered everybody to have casual sex, but, like, that's a pretty big deal. Like, casual sex is a thing that requires a bit of responsibility to do well. And oftentimes, and I think even you said this, not so erudite, you sophist fucker. I think even you brought this up where you're like, yeah, the majority of rapes happen within relationships. And I feel like that's a huge sidestep. I'm not accusing you of actually sidestepping it, but I feel like it's a sidestep sometimes to that claim where people are trying to say, like, oh, well, even if we got rid of all casual sex, like, there'd be just as much rape or more because most of it happens in relationships anyway. And I'm like, I think there's a special set of concerns for like one-off, like one-night stands versus like relationship sex that happens. That's what I was saying.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely.
There's less like communication that you've practiced with these people when you're having more casual encounters and things like that. So there's more room for misinterpretation.
And I feel like the ways to protect yourself are actually a little bit more self-evident too. Like when it's casual relationships, I know that probably seems like maybe reductive, but it's like there are certain things that just like in general you can take with any stranger encounter that you can apply to a sexual encounter. Like somewhat keep yourself, like don't give them your personal address, don't take them to your personal home, probably drive separately if you want to like stay safe. Certain things like that. Whereas like when you're in an intimate partner situation, at least in my experience, like between like clients that I've had like kind of more of a stranger or like acquaintance sexual assault versus individuals who've been in relationships, it's a lot harder to like tease apart. At least like therapeutically, it's been like a lot harder to process with clients because it's like so much more complicated. And the ways that you like, because a large part of like for trauma people is to like actually understand what prescriptions will keep them safe from that terrifying thing happening again. And an intimate partner relationship, it's tricky other than like try to get a better partner, but like what does that actually mean and how do you practically and realistically do that?
Yeah, and the set of concerns are just going to be fundamentally different, right?
I mean, I think the other thing is that like we've changed a lot legally in regards to this. Like Britain used to have laws where it was legal to engage in like marital rape, and I think you have to like look at history and sort of put things into perspective when we talk about rape culture. Like the way that we've approached marital rape and just like rape in general has changed so much. And it's why like sometimes I get like a little bit uncomfortable when you start, throwing out accusations about existing in a rape culture, just because it can really sort of, obscure all of that change that's occurred.
Do you think it would maybe be more accurate to say like there's a problem potentially with like dating culture specifically? Because like definitely I think the thing of like gatekeeping and pursuit leads to a lot of really, really bad situations.
Yeah, exactly.
I think so. I think just the way that we can't erase the way that we've socialized people. but we continue to push people into a dating culture that might not work for them based on the way that they've been socialized. So there's going to be tons of misinterpretation there because of that.
I think a lot of the problems too are like these more minor things that aren't necessarily like penetration or the worst case scenario that people think of when they think about rape. But you hear these stories coming out where really people just had like bad dates or uncomfortable dates, or were unhappy with how something went, just in the basic interactions. And those things are bad and like need to be called out. And
But we don't have a vocabulary for it because all
yeah,
we can talk
exactly.
about
It's
is
all
rape.
rape.
And like sexual assault used to be like rape, right? But now sexual assault just like broadly categorized as like anything. But like some people would call catcalling sexual assault. And so it's like there's like this like weird, like problematic, like what's it called? When like words dilute basically over time. Concept creep. That's happening with these terms that just makes it like don't rape. So like just never flirt with a girl, never like what does that mean actually?
I've started to say misconduct more. I think that kind of is like more encompassing. I don't know what you guys think of that word.
I mean, I think that's an empty word. I don't think it means anything, right? Misconduct.
I mean, it could mean a lot of things, I guess. It could vary a lot in intensity. It doesn't necessarily mean that, full on rape, right?
I don't like to have like a rape scale. I think there needs to
Yeah.
be like a whole new landscape for having these
Rape tier
conversations.
list.
It doesn't involve like rape at all, right? I think that's what needs to happen, but we just don't have it right now.
I mean, this happens with so much. Like, I think people have had like gaslighting is like another one of these words where it's just like
no, you're wrong. You're actually gaslighting right now.
yeah, you're just crazy, Destiny. It's actually a huge problem that people use this word incorrectly. But yeah, this happens like all the time, and it's really frustrating. It makes just having conversations about things so difficult.
Yeah. I mean, concept creep is a really big issue. Bad words is a really big issue. And then even just like, I think like conflation, like, because I think when we like start doing lots of concept creep, we start actually doing like, we begin to genuinely think that something like a catcall is potentially a similar behavior to like a grope. And it's like, those are obviously not the same things. And you get into this weird territory where now you're like, now I have to start questioning, like when you're saying I was really distressed by it, what do I do? Do I question you on how distressed and like your personal experience with it? Like it really kills the conversation because it's like, well, I don't want to like just dismiss your distress, but also like, is it the same as like other behaviors? And it's just like, even just optics wise, it's so difficult to navigate to not just like come away just like being like, wow, you're a giant piece of shit. And you just like want to question all victims. And it's like, that's not what we want to do here.
Something that's really disappointing is that like just by virtue of having a few of these conversations on stream, I've gotten a couple emails, and I think somebody even posted a thing on my subreddit where they basically had like a big self-reflection moment. They were like, actually, I think I've been involved in like some pretty shitty or rapey behavior in the past, but they'd never been willing to engage with the idea because they didn't want to think of themselves as a rapist. And when those are like the only words available to do it, it's the only way that people will view it. And then also I think something you kind of mentioned or kind of allude to here is the idea that like if you can have that like boundary of like rape is bad, but that's like the only thing that we're saying is bad, well then as long as I like don't actually rape anybody, you should be fine. So you're like almost encouraged to like play right up against the boundary. Like, well, what is like actual rape? And as long as you don't do that, you're like good to go.
Yeah. And then to accompany for that, people just keep extending the line of what is rape to be like, well, no, that's bad too. That's rape too. And you're like, no, there are other bad behaviors that don't need the same label and are still problematic. We just can't talk about them because of your choice of words.
Yeah.
I think on the inverse of this, like I've been in situations, to speak candidly, like where I tell someone, no, I don't want to do this. I don't want to be involved in a sexual encounter. And like by technical definition, like I have been raped, but also like in those specific scenarios, like I wasn't traumatized by that. And I came away from the scenario like that sucked, but I don't necessarily like feel comfortable calling it rape personally because it like brings in all of these like negative emotions that are sort of not apt. So I think that like you have to be really careful not to traumatize yourself or label everything that you experience as rape, because a lot of times like you can experience scenarios and also like come away from them not necessarily totally traumatized.
Yeah, I think I talked about this with Erudite before. I don't know if she said this was a real term or not, but I call this this is what I called like the retroactive trauma or whatever, where you have like a shit. I see, this is my really simplistic analysis, but I see it happen with children, where if a very very young child hurts themselves, usually they'll like look around for a reaction, and if they see a negative one, it will be a traumatic event for them. But if they don't see a negative one, they might fuss a little bit, but then they get up and they go. And I wonder sometimes if people, I think it's hard to balance this out because we can all acknowledge that there are people that go through like pretty nasty stuff that don't realize it until later. Some friend will tell you some experiences in a relationship and you're like, yeah, that was really bad. And they're like, oh, okay, maybe. But then it feels like other times people will get together and like psych themselves the fuck out over like what was like a shitty experience, but like nothing worth being traumatized over,
And this is the problem with
I
like,
actually see it
this
like in
victim.
practice a lot. Like it's a really big frustration, and it's like a bone that I pick with coworkers of like, particularly like with kids, because I think they are a lot more susceptible. But like I think especially with therapists, there's that authority piece that they like generally just want to take your word with like a lot of weight behind it. Where like it's why I'm like huge on like I never label somebody's experience as trauma. I only let them label it because I think it's like really really damaging. Of like what if they wouldn't have been traumatized if I didn't label it trauma? Because we do see evidence of that happening. And it's really scary because you want to call it trauma to be empathetic. Like the desire to label it as such things is actually like you're trying to be empathetic. Maybe sometimes virtue signaling, but I think mostly it's an intention of empathy. But it has like completely the inverse effect on that person's psychological health. And then it's like, who actually traumatized this individual? Like kind of you a little bit, like not fully, obviously you didn't do the action against them, but like,
and it's frustrating because like we're willing to acknowledge so much. Like this is the biggest thing that I took over like a 1-year psych course. The biggest takeaway that I had, the most helpful thing for my life, was I am an incredibly unreliable observer of my own reality. I am so faulty in so many different ways. I cannot be trusted to like accurately account for things. And there's like 55 million different psych experiments where people lie to themselves. There's it's like the ICE line test or whatever. What the fuck am I thinking of? There's the line test on the board where like people
where it's like different lengths.
You can do it with like standing up. You could just like be in a waiting room and have all of your people like stand up, and then they'll just be like yes, I have to stand
in a
up.
certain way in an elevator. There's like so many ways that people are bad at accounting for time, bad at accounting for, and we acknowledge it. We know these are true. And then we combine that with like once people have started to learn things, we know that people's minds can be molded by this, and we will make fun of these people in some exceptions. For instance, the hypochondriac that goes into a doctor's office that's read like 52 different medical problems about where their cough comes from. People will like kind of make fun of it, like, okay, you're not dying, you don't have cancer, like you read this and now you think you've got it, now nothing can get you off of it. And people will kind of look at it and be like, okay, we know for a variety of reasons why this is probably not a good thing. But when it comes to mental health, it's like we forget all of that, and now like every single thing is the most ultimately validated thing in the world, and everything has to be validated. And to recognize any of these biases makes you a victim blamer, or makes you doubt somebody's experiences or invalidate somebody's experiences. Like, well, hold on, like we can't just pretend that because it's a mental issue, people have become fundamentally altered agents that don't have all the same follies that they did before.
Yeah,
but
like
we're kind of
totally
forced to,
rational agents.
And it's wild to me because like literally lots of therapy is all about convincing you to reframe your landscape, to reframe how you engage with the world around you, right? And so it's just like this is literally a therapeutic technique. So this doesn't mean that we like just the way to solve trauma is we just convince everyone they weren't traumatized. Obviously, like that's not the solution. But yeah, when it comes to like especially like because mental health is happening in the brain, and it's the brain that's having these like weird things. Like the brain is so hyper flexible and can just like shift the social landscape. Yeah, it's a weird phenomenon of like, yeah, but if it's mental health, it's objectively true and we can't question it. And I'm like, what? Like, how?
I mean, a good example of this, I think, is like trigger warnings. Like there's studies done into trigger warnings, and it turns out that like what you're doing is like you're priming people to be traumatized by these things.
And it doesn't help. There was one big one. I think there was an article in The Atlantic that was talking about it as well. But like, I don't think there's any research that shows that trigger warnings are beneficial for college students.
Yeah, no.
I don't think there's anything out there that says that.
No, they're only useful for parents to make parental like viewing decisions. That would be my only argument for them. Well, but in college, if you're going to a class on like World War II, why are you giving a trigger warning? Like if it's on World War II, what do you think it's going to be about? Like daisies? Obviously not.
Well, the advantage with like parents is that like a parent can make a decision for the child and like choose to limit their content. But like when you present someone with a trigger warning, it's like a lot of times it doesn't encourage them to avoid the content. It just allows them to engage with the content in a way where they're like prepared to be traumatized and end up traumatizing themselves.
Oh
So
yeah, because there was one. I think that one study that I'm thinking of. I think what it did was I want to say the way that the methodology worked was it showed the exact same content to two different cohorts, but it told one cohort that it was like triggering, and it didn't say it to the other one. And the ones that were told preemptively that it was triggering were more likely to report being traumatized or having some symptoms. I think it was even like I think they asked questions of like, did you feel more stressed out? Did you have a bad day the next day, or whatever? The people that were told it was triggering had that negative response.
that was my impression as well.
Just by virtue of being told. Erudite.
Because it's priming.
Yeah, it is true. Which is a really well understood. Well, maybe not super well understood why it happens, but it happens, right? We can measure it. Somebody wants to have a conversation with you about things that you might have said improperly. Do you want me to restart this call? I can do it with all of you. With this other person who can't rejoin this call now.
I gotta think about that. I was gonna go to the gym tonight.
Yeah, it can be a short combo. I have to go to the gym too, so we're all needing the gym tonight. Okay.
Yeah.
Wait, what time zone are you in?
MST. It's 8:30 here.
Oh my God, you've got so much time. Are you serious?
What is your bedtime? What is your sleep
8:30?
schedule like?
It's 8:30. I'm sorry. What are you doing tomorrow? Streaming? Playing video games?
I have a job, by the way, that I have to work.
What time do you have to clock in?
I don't have to clock in at any time, but I do need to
Oh
get.
my goodness.
I need to get.
Wow.
I'm working about like 60 to 70 hours a week right now. I just need to get up early enough to do this
Okay,
shit.
so what you're saying is we have to limit this conversation to 20 minutes. I understand.
Yeah, 20 minutes. My bedtime is I have a little baby child. No, I'm just kidding. I go to bed at like 1 or 2. But I do have a fair bit of work to get tonight, so I need to go to the gym, which takes me about 2 hours. And then yeah.
Okay, so you're saying you don't want to do this conversation?
I don't. Sure, we can do this conversation. Fuck it.
You're so easy to bully. Thank you. All
I know.
gonna
I'm
call
Canadian.
Jackie
I don't know
back
what to
in,
tell
okay?
you.
Hold on.
Oh my gosh.
Why is your name so fucking stupid? Tafjuza. What the fuck is your name? Taftaj.
The Erudite gets it instantly.
Taftaj.
Yeah, but I've been simping over Taftaj for a very long time. Destiny has just
likewise.
started his journey of simping for Taftaj. Okay.
I don't simp.
I just messaged Destiny like, God, Natsu Erudite is so based every time I say something.
Oh, I just mostly message people and I talk about how attractive Taftaj is and based. Obviously,
He's
I don't
nice.
just objectify you, but
See you guys there.
We're going for 10 million views on YouTube.
Unbelievable.
We're at 8 million. What? Shut up.
The drama.
Oh my God.
Are we turning on cameras or is that weird?
let me just
Whatever
get
you're
a.
comfortable with.
Okay.
So who's the moderator in this situation?
Who's the? Oh, I'm moderating, of course.
Moderating? Okay. Did she?
She's coming. Don't worry. We don't need cameras. We're all women in here, including me, who has a woman's name, so we're good.
Very true.
The viewers want cameras. So.
Oh.
Give the people what they want, Destiny. Obviously. What do you mean? Why am I telling the 13-year veteran how to
Gotta get the views somehow.
appease his viewers?
Okay, we're waiting.
You know what? While we wait, I'm going to run to the washroom. So.
Washroom? Go do that, yeah. All right, how you guys doing? What are your predictions for these fireworks that are about to erupt here?
I think it's gonna go really well.
Yeah, I've heard that she's saying super nice things. So
Okay.
I think August will be very happy. That's what I think.
Gotcha. Taftaj?
Yeah, you're doing great. You could also just say April.
No, I don't think I will.
Okay.
I don't think I know you that well to call you at first name basis. Okay.
So I should call you Destiny every time.
I would appreciate that, actually,
Okay,
yes.
yeah. Mr. Destiny.
No, that's too much.
Sir Destiny.
We're waiting for Not So Erudite to come back, okay?
I think Not So Erudite's name is harder than Taftaj.
Maybe.
It is English, which is an advantage. It is actual words.
I mean, technically everything is actual words, right?
Okay, find Taftaj in a dictionary, Stephen. That's what I mean.
Okay, fuck you. Is Erudite in it? Oh shit, it is. Fuck, never mind.
Destroyed.
Shut up. Okay.
Yikes! All right.
Welcome.
Also, it's erudite. You pronounce it very strangely.
Erudite. That's because it's a really fucking strange word. Okay.
Steven's
Erudite.
borderline illiterate. Okay.
That's all right.
What is
I would-
that supposed to be? Is that like a reference I'm not getting?
It probably comes from a Jordan Peterson book. So.
He's just mad because he has to only get his news from the Atlantic because it gives those audio recordings to overcome his reading difficulties.
Well, I mean, I think
We can't all be fine literature enjoyers of 12 Rules for Life. How to sort our life from chaos as I fly to fucking Russia. Fuck! The
I
break
don't
my
know.
benzo addiction. Shut up. Okay, Anna and not so Erudite. Go.
I think Anna, you're probably feeling some way more than I am. So do you want to let me know what's
I'm
going
feeling
on?
a whole fucking lot. I'm fucking pissed.
I guess can I
I mean, you
ask
basically
you
dogpiled me.
just me myself, or are you talking? Are you pissed with all of us right now?
Mostly with Fanatic, because he just basically set me up to be fucking dogpiled just after last night when he was being a fucking asshole to me, trying to convince me I wasn't emotionally abused by this douche over here.
Okay, so I guess Fanatic isn't here to talk
Why are
or
you
defend
fucking
himself.
laughing?
I'm sorry. It's my dog. Hold on.
So I tried very hard to make it clear that I wasn't completely disagreeing with what you're saying, and I think Taftaj and the other people here as well were trying to say that we're not disagreeing with 100% with what you're
The
saying.
facts
We're
of
just
the matter, yeah.
we're just adding on a second layer.
Yeah, it's fine. I didn't have a problem with what you were saying. Or you, Taftaj, it's fine. Like, I'm not upset with you guys.
Okay.
But I think
Wait, but you're upset with
I think
not
we
so
were all-
Erudite, right?
Yeah.
Or you're Erudite.
I think we were all saying similar things, though. I mean, there wasn't that much that was different.
I mean, you can't just say that, like, anybody can induce false memories in anyone. That's not true. You can't just make someone believe that they were raped when they weren't. That's not
My understanding is that the first research relating, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong. My understanding is the first research relating to false memories came from forensic psychologists that were noticing that witnesses could create false memories in each other. It wasn't therapists; it was witnesses doing it. That's my understanding.
It came from BC Okanagan, actually. I know this like personally because I'm friends with people who like worked under the main researcher under that. So like that's typically where it originates from. I guess I don't know quite, Anna, what your like frustration was around that.
I mean, it just seemed like everything I brought up you were just dismissing as like somehow like the research was it like some flawed in some way, and so like you can't use it, and like
So I guess are you comfortable with the idea of like me disagreeing with you? Like in academia, I'm sure you're familiar. We argue about stuff and it gets even pretty heated where we'll argue about theories. I mean, the like language debate between Chomsky and the other dude was like super, super spicy. So like academics are going to disagree with each other all the time, but that's like the process of good science. It's like, we should be disagreeing. We should be pushing each other on methodology. We should be questioning things. We should be open about the limits of certain things because it just improves the science overall. But that doesn't mean that like I have some personal feelings about you in that moment when I'm questioning some of the data that you're presenting.
the other people who already hate me and attack me constantly, well, I mean, they're just going to use that as more ammo against me.
Right, but I guess like what do you suggest that I would do in that situation? Because like I'm invited on a panel to talk about ideas. I'm going to engage with the ideas and I'm going to question data with your data, with anyone else's data as well that I might get. Not that I question all data, but I'm going to look at it and be like, well, what are the limits to these things and what can we take away from it? So are you basically like saying that like in a debate panel, I have to like not
No.
disagree with you? Like what's your recommendation for me to do?
No, of course not. No, of course not. It's just I don't know. I don't get why like the empirical data that I was bringing up like somehow wasn't like I don't know. It just seemed like you were saying like it wasn't good. I don't know. Like I don't know what I'm talking about or something.
Sure.
Like, I'm
Do you want to
pretty
maybe
sure I do.
could you clarify for me what you felt that I was saying, and then would you give me space to correct if that was or wasn't what I was saying?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. What did you feel like I was saying?
It seems like you were basically saying that like all the empirical data that I was like bringing up was somehow like flawed and like unreliable and just like whatever could be dismissed or something.
Okay. Was there a feeling like personally that was attached to that? Like, did you feel like I was also trying to undercut you as an individual?
Maybe a little, I suppose.
Okay. Do you, now that like we're less heated, do you think that I was actually doing that? Because if you do feel like I was actually doing that, we can talk about it. But I just want to know, do you still feel that way, that I was actually trying to personally attack you?
No.
Okay. I'm glad. So I was definitely questioning the data, not overall. I'm not saying that like everything presented was useless and garbage. I'm saying like here are some of the limits that I see to some of the interpretations, which is why I wouldn't use this data to make the extent of the claims that you potentially were making with them. That was all I was saying. I wasn't trying to say I think Anna's stupid and dumb and nobody should listen to her, because to be honest, I'm mean enough that I will say that to somebody if I think that.
Yeah.
Okay. So are we good?
Well, I don't know. Did it feel like Erudite was like discrediting rape victims with the way that she was engaging with her research claims?
Maybe. Yeah, that's what I felt like also. Yeah. Kind of.
Okay. Could you explain that more to me?
It seemed like, yeah, it sort of seemed like you were kind of saying that like, yeah, like we can't trust. It just sounded like you were really dismissing like any of the like anything that's like self-reported or whatever. Like I know there's flaws with self-report and retrospective, of course, but it just kind of came off as though like, yeah, it can't be trusted at all. And the only way to get like an objective, or like the only way to be able to trust it is if it's like dealt with in like a criminal justice context, or like has been reported to police or something. And yeah, I don't know.
Okay. So I guess I'm concerned about being. I don't want the perception to be that I'm dismissing rape victims, because I take it really seriously. I think it really, really matters, and I agree that there's been a systemic problem and systematic problem historically as well of a dismissal of rape victims, right? When I'm questioning the extent of the data, this isn't to say that I don't believe rape victims. My issue is that I'm curious, would you agree that basically the word rape has come to mean a lot more things than just actual rape? Like it's kind of been extended
Yeah.
beyond.
And I
Okay.
have a problem with that. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think we'd agree on that. And so my concern with some of these studies is I went through the CDC's questionnaire itself, and some of the questions left me concerned of being like, I can see how this might lead to people marking as a yes, like an affirmative, because the questions are worded in such a way that they're a little bit leading, and they don't preclude certain situations that I don't think anyone, even themselves, would necessarily identify as rape, but it wouldn't be marked off on the measure as rape. And so my concern about overinflating rape numbers is because I do think there are individuals who are bad actors who try to use rape claims for their benefit. And the reason that makes me so mad isn't just because of the individual's lives that they fuck up, which sucks, but it particularly makes rape victims' lives so much harder, right? When we have Alice Sebold, like a really big writer, coming out about basically being like, yeah, I did make a fake allegation and I had a guy incarcerated for like multiple years. There's a really big problem with that because it actually makes rape victims who have been struggling to be heard historically for a long time, it makes their job bigger, right?
I mean, I disagree because I don't think that. I think that's a bit much to claim that there's a significant amount of people though that are like bad actors. I don't think it's enough to like be able to sway data though. I mean,
But people don't make decisions based on data, right? They'll make it off of like one or two high profile cases sometimes.
Usually, yeah.
yeah, I guess I've always felt like that's just kind of like a scapegoat to be like, well, look, someone made a false accusation, therefore I'm just going to be like an asshole and like not believe rape victims. I feel
I
like
don't
that's
think-
way more of a problem.
I feel like the problem isn't the false accusation. This is something I just recently figured out. I don't think the problem is ever the one-off. I think the
No.
problem is how other people respond to the one-off. Because I think the issue comes from the fact that there is a one-off thing that happens and it's bad, but but rather than everybody saying it's bad, you get like some group of people that almost seem like they're defending it, and then it makes the people on the other side think that it's a bigger problem than it might actually be. I think that's the scary thing.
Maybe. I don't know. I mean, I mean, look, I've seen a lot of like, but also, well, there also is a problem of like actual victims like being accused of like tons of them get accused of like being false
Yeah, that is a problem.
accusers.
But there's
That's
also
a
like false
big
accusation
problem.
problems too. There's problems all over the place. That's the
I
issue.
don't
That's-
I don't think false accusations are that big of a problem though.
well, you might not, but maybe you're not the type of person to get falsely accused, or maybe it's just something you're concerned with. But there are people
That's
that
an ironic statement.
Well, I think a
Right.
specific
there
problem
are
is
there are going to be people in different areas that do feel like a little bit worried about that, and if they see how the culture around that is changing, and we've seen it happen in esports and in Twitch, where sometimes like really dog shit accusations are made, and it takes the guy like months to respond to it because it's so serious, even if the original accusation was as thin as air.
I mean, Anna, I think a lot of the problem is like very specific to the medium too. Like when you have social media and trial by society, by the public, you know, that invites a lot of people to sort of speculate and treat it like this just like reality TV show. And so like on one hand, social media has allowed people to make these accusations, but it's also introduced new problems by making it so public. And so, you know, one thing we can talk about is just like the role of courts. And if people are more able, whether it be through like education or whatever, to make rape accusations credibly through the courts, you know, that might be a solution to people feeling like they need to go to the public to do these things, and therefore, you know, introduce and invite all of these extra problems.
Yeah. I mean, I agree that cancel culture is a problem, of course.
Well, but it's not even cancel culture. You would expect people to respond really negatively if somebody has a rape accusation against them, right? I wouldn't think that's cancel culture. That's just people being kind of reasonable.
Yeah, part of it's very
social
normal.
shaming. Yeah, that's why we social shame like murderers even when they get out, right? Because there's this attachment to their name, and there's an element of like we probably should socially shame these behaviors because if somebody's a rapist, that's a really bad thing, and we're going to view them as immoral, right? And so if somebody's because of the huge weight of consequence of being claimed, it's the same with the malingering. Like you know, clinically, if a client gets diagnosed as a malingerer, they're fucked. They're literally fucked. They'll never get on welfare. They'll never get support. It's like they're fucked. I would say the same with being accused as a rapist, especially if it becomes publicized, right? And especially in the cases like we don't want innocents ever going to jail. We also, in this case, don't want innocents having a trial by media and being accused of being a rapist and having all of the social repercussions of literally being a rapist and then it turning out to not be true, but the damage is already done. That's the problem with social media is the damage is already done half the time. And that's really, really scary.
I can understand that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Anything else?
I guess that's it. Yeah. Thanks.
Okay. It seemed like you were really frustrated with me specifically. Was I misreading that?
Yeah. No, you weren't.
Okay.
That's accurate. Yeah.
Do you want to talk about that, or would you prefer to talk about that privately?
We could talk about that privately. That's fine. Yeah. Okay. Thanks for talking with me though about this. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no worries.
Wow, well, good job. I'm proud of all of you.
And also, Erudite is too good at de-escalating.
I've worked in a lot of jails. De-escalation was my bread and butter.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, well, you said you had to leave. Why are you being awkward? Leave. Go away.
All right, I'm gonna go work out. And if you want to chat more privately, you can just DM me. You know where I'm at.
Yeah, sure.
Great. Good night, guys.
Good night, guys.
Whoa, good stuff. Very fun. Heck yeah. We're gonna end the stream. I love you all so much. You guys are great. Thank you for following me to YouTube chat. I love you all, and good night.